All right, and we are live for episode 17 with William Filipek of TJW Exotics. And before we start talking to William here, if you're not a member of USARK and USARK Florida, you should probably sign up if you're listening to this podcast. And if you are already a member, you know, talk to people in your offices and workplaces and things like that. And just from a conservation aspect, USARK Florida does a lot for conservation, and it's very important. But moving on now, William, what got you into keeping, and what do you keep now, and what are you most excited about?
I've been keeping for probably about 15 years now. Well, we used to catch box turtles, like three-toed box turtles outside and keep them for a while. That was always a big thing for us. We'd catch tons of them. We'd catch them. We'd make like little pins outside. They'd escape. We'd go catch more. And, but I still didn't know anything about the reptile hobby. We'd keep them and they'd get out, but we had no idea there was an industry. So, I'd have to say it was probably 97 or 98. I was watching television, and we only had a few channels, but one of the channels, it was a blurry version of a guy trying to catch a Parenti monitor in Australia, and it was Steve Irwin, and that left a everlasting impression on me. And then, you know, if I wasn't outside, I was watching animal shows. So like Steve Irwin, Jeff Corwin, Mark O'Shea, a lot of those guys. And then around the time Steve passed away or was killed, then they left kind of just a hole in that whole animal documentary thing, I guess you'd call it. And then shortly after that, Brian Barczyk started doing his YouTube channel. And then you got to see the reptile industry, because Steve Irwin and them I think, well, you're about the same age as me, got us all probably into animals, maybe not reptiles in particular, but animals in particular. Mm-hmm. Well, Barczyk kind of focused it. Oh, now I didn't even know there was a reptile industry or community like it was, you know. You know, I've known people who kept snakes, but you didn't realize how just hidden and big it was, I guess, or how something as big as it is can be hidden from society. So I started watching his videos, got really into the industry or interested in the industry. And then I started going to local shows around me, and you know, like most kids, you know, their parents wouldn't let them have snakes. And so I was keeping leopard geckos, pyxis geckos, stuff like that for years. And eventually I was able to acquire a snake. And
did your parents come around, or was that when you moved out?
Yeah, I was still at home. My dad, I think, because I was like some kids in high school, I was kind of going through that, like I could go two different paths, you know, one not so good, one, you know, at least honest, right? And it was like, if I didn't have one, you could tell my mind was focused on doing something I probably shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. So, and my parents lived that lifestyle back when they were much younger. And I think they kind of looked at it as like, you know, if we don't get him something, well, if we don't let him pursue something he's interested in, you know, do we want to take the chance of this, you know, going south, I guess, or, you know, going bad? So they ended up letting me pick up my first snake, and And it kind of went downhill from there because prior to that though I was still breeding. I was breeding the leopard geckos and pyxis geckos a bit. You know,
What
going
were
to
you doing with the
reptile,
babies?
selling them at shows. I started vending reptile shows for 2010. I
Wow.
was selling leopard geckos and stuff, and then once I got snakes, then I could tell. Well, that was where my interest really was snakes because I slowly start weeding out the geckos because I like lizards, but there's something about snakes that just fascinate me so much. Seem like so much more than just the lizards do. But
Yeah. What was your
yeah,
first snake?
oh, it was a ball python. I still have her. It's a albino ball python.
Really?
You know, yeah, it was. Well, even back then, I mean, ball pythons were still, I mean, so prominent. You know, you'd get diversity, but it was still, if it wasn't a ball python, it was probably a boa. Boas were probably second most common.
Hmm.
Maybe I would even say more so than even maybe I don't know. Colubrids are probably close. There were still a bunch of different species of colubrids. But it was one of those you could tell. Like if I would have gotten a boa first, I'm sure I would have been a boa guy. Or the python obviously led me down more of this python road. So I ended up getting the ball python, and you know, again, I was still watching Bar Check, so it was kind of like, you know, back then I remember the industry was very, very much sold on like, you know, if you take A snake and B snake, breed them together, you'll make C snake, you know, or you know, you breed these together, you spend this much and this much, you can make this much off the offspring. That was a big thing back then. I remember, well, even prior to me, I know that was the selling point for a lot of people. You know, it wasn't the primary reason, but it certainly was a motivator to think about trying to breed them. So then I would just collect. I was collecting a bunch of ball pythons, and then, well, shortly after ball pythons, I ended up picking up carpet pythons. That was something I was always really interested in because, you know, being a fan of Steve Irwin, you know, I'm sure you've seen quite a few carpet incidents he's had with like getting bit in the face and
Oh
stuff
yeah.
like that. So I think some of that made me fairly interested in the carpet python stuff. So picked up carpet pythons, and oddly enough, the carpet pythons were young adults or adults, small adults,
What
uh,
kind?
just mutts,
Okay.
whatever. Just you know, they're sold as jungles, but you know they're not
Yeah.
jungles. I had that. I picked her up in 2010. She just passed away a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
She was pretty. I mean, she wasn't quite 20, but she was up there. And it was one of those. I got her really big, like for what she would probably have been healthy for her. So that was probably she probably could have lived longer if I'd have kept her leaner, like the male. The male, I'm sure he's probably still kicking around. I sold him though, but yeah, I was into the snakes. I remember first few snakes I picked up was the ball python, then the carpet pythons, Woma pythons, and then it was primarily ball pythons. I'm not gonna lie, I really got hooked on the ball python train. A lot of you see a lot of the new people with Justin now. I mean, Barchek was the same way for a lot of us 10 years ago or more now. You know, you got hooked onto the ball pythons, and they're cool species too. You know, a lot of ball
Hmm.
python or non-ball python people really poo-poo the ball pythons and stuff, but they're still. I've seen some pretty fascinating things ball pythons will do that other pythons won't do, and I don't know. I think if you're a true python lover, if you can look past the fame and the glory that that the ball python industry can perceive or come across, you can see some pretty cool stuff with the ball pythons as far as just natural behaviors and interesting things they do. But after the ball pythons, I I think it was at a reptile show. I started talking to Ben Rennick. He's a big local breeder near me in Missouri. So I was talking to him. He was always really inviting too. He'd say, if you get a chance, come out. You can come out to the building. And then I came out once, and that was the first time I've ever seen a breeding operation of that size, so went there probably twice. And then he either asked me or I asked him. I was like, you ever need help? I'd be more than happy to help you. Well, and then I start working with him back in 2013. So worked with him, got to see the ins and the outs of the industry, how run an operation essentially. So that was pretty interesting. It was a lot of animals. I mean, he would have it was like 1,600 slots, like
Whoa.
individual tubs for babies. This is just babies. And he would fill that up at least two and a half times a year. Like because he would, whatever he'd wholesale and sell, he'd refill those. I mean, it was impressive. I mean, it was constant work. So
Was that a lot of
yeah,
ball pythons or?
I was primarily ball pythons. He might have like I think it was around that time he was kind of more focused on ball pythons. He was like, he didn't want to get rid of the retics, but he was definitely slowing down on the retics because I think anyone who knew Ben was very much so a retic and probably, I guess, an anaconda guy people would associate him with. But he was kind of on the Peter end of like, he wanted to really slim down on the retics because it's a lot of work. I mean, those retics aren't no joke. I mean, especially the ones he had. He had a lot of F1s and a few wild caught ones that were less than pleased to be messed with for sure. And believe it or not, his wild caught anacondas were better temperament than the retics and the F1 anacondas he had. A lot of his F1 anacondas were horrible. I actually almost got bitten, almost had a bite to the crotch by one of the double het males. Oh, he wasn't tiny either. He was probably 6 foot, 6.5 foot. And I mean, even a 6 foot anaconda male is still that big around. I mean, they've still got some girth to them. So
Wow.
yeah, that was probably the most spine chilling moment I've ever had with any snake. So yeah, no, I worked with him and I worked with him all the way up to the point he was killed, and
Wow.
really got to really introduce me to the hobby because Barcheck kind of shows you the hobby. And then working for someone like Ben, you really got to see the inside of the hobby because the inside of the hobby works differently than what you'd see on the outside. It's not the glitz and glamour that, most YouTubers will mostly show you for the most part,
Yeah. Yeah. Sunshine and rainbows.
Right. Yep.
How long did you work for him for?
He was killed in 2017 and 4 years or something, I believe.
Wow.
Something like that, a little over 4 years.
So you almost got your 10,000 hours just doing that right there.
Yeah,
That's
it was.
pretty awesome.
Well, and I enjoyed it too. I was like, work shitty jobs and then you actually do something. I didn't do it for a living. I would work for snakes. I would literally I would take off of use vacation time at my job just to go up there to work for them. That's how into that I was compared to the day job. And I think I lost a relationship over it too because I was hanging out with him more than I was the ex at the time. Because
Wow.
I'm horrible at prioritizing, personal
No,
life. Anyways,
I don't know. I think you might be really good at it.
yeah, but yeah, I worked with him for a while. And then Dave Levinson, he took over the collection. I worked with him for a little while there. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little hard because he moved the whole collection out of Ben's original spot. I think in 2018 or 19. So I tried to help him as much as I could, but it was
What state did you grow up in? Just for some
Missouri.
time. Okay,
Missouri.
Missouri. Okay, and this
Yeah.
was all in Missouri?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben probably lived 25 minutes or so from me, so it wasn't that far of a drive. So Dave was out there, and it was just mentally exhausting because of how just what happened in that building and because I had to deal with the authorities and stuff because the authorities they didn't want to go through that building. So I had to escort them through that building the night of, or the day that happened. So, because, allegedly they thought a snake killed Ben at first. So I had to
Mm.
go through, I had to do all that. So, made it a little more mentally draining to go up there. It's
Yeah.
weird. You go from a place you take off work to go to a place that you really could care less of going to anymore, but you don't want to leave the animals and Dave
Mm.
alone up there because he's I don't he had so much work put on him and that happened. It was ridiculous.
Mm.
So yeah, we until he moved, he ended up moving further south in Missouri, southern Missouri, and that's when I was unable to really. He tried to get me to go out there to work for him, but I was like, I don't know. I kind of want to do my own thing now. It was one of those like when Ben died, it was like kind of like a reset, I guess, on what to do next.
Mm.
Because I don't know, it was one of those like I was fine with being where I was as far as my collection. I was breeding. I was on a much smaller scale. It wasn't nothing big, but I was satisfied with it. But then once he passed, it was one of those like kind of felt like an empty void, kind of. So I don't. Maybe I thought I was like, I kind of want to give this a shot at some point. So
Yeah.
trying to working towards it. It's definitely not easy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that had to have been. I mean, it seems like he was your mentor in
Oh yeah.
all respects, and
Yeah. It was the first time that was his building or his place was the first time I ever got hands-on experience with retics, birds, and anaconda, the real big snakes. So
mm,
prior to that, I had no real experience with big constrictors till I started working there. And yeah, it was, learned a lot. Working with, big constrictors is like, I mean, certain things like, you go from cleaning like a wall of racks to one retic cage will take, depending on how cooperative the female is, can take as quick as 15 to 20 minutes to as long as an hour, depending on how just one cage, depending on how quick or how easy that female or male is to work.
yeah,
That's where I got to see my first ever like reproductive male, the combative male. That
mm,
was the first time I got to witness one of those in person. And that's where I got one of my first big retic bites was from that.
wow,
And then a feeding response bite a couple months later from a big female, you know,
man,
it wasn't too bad. Believe it or not, the male bite was pretty nasty. Like, it wasn't like needed to go to the doctor to get stitches, but bruised up my arm pretty good. So
wow. So that bite was more defensive.
it was like combative, like a male, like a combat male. Like, so I noticed something was up, and man, ever since this happened, anytime a snake cuffs me with its tail, always, especially my hands, it makes me real nervous because this is what the
Mm,
male did. He cuffed my hands with his body, his tail and his back end of his body,
mm,
and he would cuff him, and then he would meet it. He wouldn't do it like in a striking way. He would just immediately turn back around,
wow.
and then he would. That's when he wouldn't just lunge at you. He would just come up to you. And as soon as you make contact with something on your body, that's when he'd pop his mouth open
Mm,
on me
damn.
or something like that. So the female retic, that was a food response bite. She bit and wrapped.
Oh, damn.
So
How big was she?
she was 15 feet, maybe about
Ooh,
60 pounds, I'd say, something like that.
no
She
thanks.
wasn't small. Yeah. She took what was it? I think it was one of my ring fingers. Yeah, it was this one. She like took the skin off the top of it, but
Ugh,
that was about it. It was just that. It was wild because when she bit the hand, she primarily just bit that ring finger, and the only reason the skin came off was because she plopped out of the cage and she was probably 6 feet off. Well, maybe about 6 feet off the ground. So when she came out, she just flopped to the ground. So she took my hand with her, and it was just the weight of her body attached to that hand that ended up putting a hurt on it. So
Did she wrap your arm, or was her
she
body?
tried. She started to, and then she kind of started to let she you could tell her bite went from like tight to started releasing a bit. I think the blood just didn't taste like what she was used to. I don't know. I could be wrong. We got her off pretty quick, so it wasn't like it
Yeah.
sat there too long to find out.
Damn.
So,
That's wild.
but
It's
yeah.
it's kind of crazy. Like looking for a mentor. I remember back when I got into snakes in I think it was like 2010. I remember the person I was buying a lot of the animals from was a breeder, and she had rodents and everything like that. And I was desperately like trying to come over and help. Like I just wanted to come and scoop poop and, help
Right.
feed snakes and everything. But it's kind of hard to get that,
Oh
like
yeah.
some people don't want to open up and receive help. So
It's
that's,
scary, man. It's really scary. Like when Ben was killed for the longest time, we were just like, when we found out it was a murder, because at the time you couldn't tell he was shot or anything, we were like, who in the industry would want to kill Ben before we knew it was his wife? Because we originally thought it was reptile related. And I'm just like, man, so this is why Vin Russo, Nick, and all them just rather
mm,
have to just, unless you're blood related or you're not even a snake person, he'd rather you just not, they just rather you not come over,
mm,
Because, I
yeah.
mean, you never know. People stealing stuff, people, and even people you like, if they come over, it's not so much them, it's people they know or people
Mm-hmm.
they talk to that they might actually slip out and address. And
Mm-hmm.
then they come over and uninvited and they end up, you just never know. It's a big risk a lot of breeders take. I mean, it could be anywhere from biosecurity to just theft to, I mean, there's just tons of different reasons. Especially like employees. I mean, that's another one. I think like you got to have someone you really
Mm-hmm.
trust or like even some sort of contract or something. Because I mean, that's the trust someone to come over to clean your stuff and not either. Because I've heard so many nightmare stories, anywhere from biosecurity stuff going awry because someone just didn't care or didn't know, and theft. I've even heard of people bringing, what was it? Either bringing a female over to their collection without them knowing to breed to a really expensive male, or I've
Whoa.
heard if the guy is actually gone, like the breeder is gone, the guy will take that male or whatever it was, take the male, bring it back to his place to breed, and I've heard stories like that. I've heard, I don't know. Those are probably the primary stealing eggs. Taking a baby here and there or something like that. And yeah, like I said, there's a bunch of scary things that could happen.
Yeah, it makes sense. You'd almost want to hire somebody that doesn't keep snakes for
Yeah,
biosecurity, for, then they won't have an interest in taking things, and
right. Even like
yeah.
even like non-snake people, the only thing is I guess it depends on what you have them do. Like if I was to hire someone, it would probably for more baby stuff rather than adult stuff.
Hmm.
Mainly because if you just go in there and mess with babies, I don't have to worry about you touching adults and then touching babies, or
Hmm.
oh, this ball python didn't eat, I'm going to give it to an Angolan python. That's a big no too. And what else? Like or you just intermix breedings that I didn't even want you to do to begin with. So
Hmm.
like I said, there's all kinds of, and a lot of that I learned from Ben. When I worked for Ben and stuff. Like, I mean, you get to see a lot of like the ins and outs of an operation his size and kind of get an idea of do's and don'ts.
So can you give me an example of some, like, so did you say this ball python didn't eat? Let me give it to another snake.
Yeah, that's a big. You want to spread any type of viruses or anything like that, that's a real good way to do it. if this snake doesn't eat, giving it to it. Anytime, it always makes me cringe too when someone says, "Oh, I got this boa, this carpet python, this retic for my garbage disposal if my ball
Mm-hmm.
pythons didn't eat." That's usually a red flag, man. You do something like that, you want to spread any kind of viruses or anything like that. That's a real great way of doing it, and that's a lot of times how you can decimate a collection and stuff. And
Mm.
watering's another one. Like I remember there was a couple different ways I would see, or a couple different things I would see people do. Is they would get that big plastic tub and they set it on a cart, and they would use it to scoop water for
Mm.
different snakes, and that's a great way to, especially if you're one of those guys where you look at a cup and you go, well, that doesn't look too bad, and you just wipe it out and then you scoop it. Well, whatever, if that snake did have something, you just spread it to something else. And
Yeah.
I've seen some pretty disastrous things. I mean, I've heard Nick on here before, same kind of thing. You don't want to use the same sponge to clean out or scrubber to clean out other crock dishes and stuff. So
Yeah.
disposable water cups, if you have a decent sized collection, is always something good to have if you can, just for those types of reasons, to try to avoid stuff like that. And and that, bringing people over, if someone were to bring mites over and you have a sizable collection, oh my
Mm.
god, that can be just horrendously bad.
Yeah, it makes my OCD run wild.
Right. Yep. No, that's exactly it.
It makes sense though why Nick is a one man operation. I mean, it's insane that he is, but you
Yeah.
hear that he's doing that whole thing just by himself. And
Yeah.
but like he says, it's his job, and it seems like
Right.
he really treats it like a job. Like, he
Yep.
shows up and he puts the work in. But
Right.
it makes
Yep.
sense, why you wouldn't want just any Tom, Dick, or Harry walking through your facility, and who the hell, if they're snake people, who knows how they keep their animals?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's you just never know. I mean, it's bad enough we're willing to take chances at shows, let alone at our own personal collection, having to take a chance with bringing, random people over or people you might know. I'm at the point now, like if I know you and if I like you, and I want you to come over, like I already know now, like we have this NRBC show in St. Louis. I know there's going to be people that want to come over to see the building now because it just recently got done. Well, for the most part. And, I'm going to have to tell them, I'm going to be like, all right, this is the deal. If you come over, I'm going to give each one of you a can of Prevenamite, and you spray your clothes and shoes before you come in, because they're generally the people who are going to come by or want to come by are other vendors, reptile breeders. And I don't mind, but it's one of those, and I don't want a bunch of people at once. You'd rather, like when I see Bill Siegel and all of them, they have these giant groups of people in their place. That's just, oh, that's kind of, makes me a little nervous,
Yeah.
I don't know, or get like OCD, makes my OCD go wild,
Yeah.
seeing all those people just, yeah, and they just opening stuff up, looking at stuff, and you're just like, my thing too is someone's going to open something and they're going to forget to close it all the way, and then next thing you know it, you got one snake out, and then other snakes want to let other snakes out because they want a fiesta or a party going on, so they'll start letting other ones out. I've seen that happen before too. So even if, like, take biosecurity and theft aside, if people just come over and start opening shit and they just forget to close it and you don't notice it or whatever, then you got to deal with that snake getting out, letting 10 other snakes out, and then you got to collect all them. And yeah, stuff like that. Or would be another one. Oh,
Well,
if someone got bit, that's,
yeah.
if you don't know that person, they could try to legally wise go after you for getting, you know, you know, bit by whatever it is. I know Ben had that scare with the big constrictors. You can get, serious. He had one employee who got bit on the thigh, and it cut his thigh so bad he had to go get stitches.
Damn.
And the doctor, I think one of them, I think he got turned down by one doctor, because I think one doctor just called him on his BS because Ben tried to tell him it was glass that cut him, and he tried to
Mm,
tell him it was glass, and the doctor said that there's no way that was glass, and he had to, I think, go somewhere else. But yeah,
wow.
that's kind of another thing, especially now if you're like Justin or something where you primarily ball pythons, it's probably not something you got to worry about. But I got a whole miscellaneous room with all my other python species. If you open those and you don't know what you're opening, you'll get bit in the face. I mean, there's some stuff in there. Like I had an incident. My brother, because I primarily feed at night, right? So my brother brought his girlfriend over to come look at the stuff with my nephew too, and they come down here and the lights just went off too, so it was somewhat dark, and they start opening shit, and they opened this. I caught them while they were opening up this Retix tote, and she's probably 8 feet long or so at the time, and it was some big mainland Southeast Asian group of Retix, and so the big ones. And I said, "Man, you got so lucky you didn't get nailed in the face by that thing." I mean, geez, fuck. I go, you would, because his girlfriend would have left. My nephew would have ran out and left. It wouldn't have killed him, but it sure as shit would have hurt if it would have latched onto you, and they would have just left you. They probably just ran out screaming. And I go, it's like you have like the common sense of a child when it comes, or like a domesticated human trying to, self-preservation,
Yeah.
opening shit that would probably bite you. So, yeah, I don't know that. But on topic of what we were talking about, yeah, there's all kinds of, there's more problems you can have bringing someone over than benefits.
Yeah.
Unless you're one of those
Yeah.
guys who sell a lot of stuff. If you sell a lot of stuff out of your building, I know sometimes that's like a sales tactic people use, but I don't know if it's worth it if you potentially have stuff that could bite people, or you know irresponsible people letting stuff loose, or you don't know them and they bring little bugs over or something like that. I don't know. There's, like I said, it's up to the individual, I guess, if you want to take that chance.
Yeah. Well, if you're having people spray themselves down with prevenamide, I'm sure you're going to weed out the weak with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I hope so. Anyways, so
I know I'd say hell no to that.
right, right. Well,
I
yeah,
read the
you got
back of
to
the
got to.
can.
I would say you got to try to do what you can to protect yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
a
for
that's the
sure.
best way I could think of doing it.
What's your protocol for going to a show and vending at a show? Like, how do you protect your animals and your collection back home?
You preventamite. That's probably the best one. Is I preventamite the shit out of everything. I'll do the floor, the door, uh, entering and exiting. The cases I pre-spray. The tubs I pre-spray. Uh, Stuff like that. I haven't. I could probably keep stuff back in the house again. The quarantine, where before I didn't have anywhere to quarantine stuff. I brought back from shows. I have a quarantine section for new animals that I get from other collections, but I didn't have one for show animals because I really don't want to quarantine other animals to my animals I just bring home from a show. So I generally just do the preventamite situation because, like, and then as far as that shows, I try not to let people handle stuff unless you're actually interested in stuff, or what would be another one, like uh, every once in a while, a little kid that you can tell is real shy. That it wasn't. You get two kind of kids, right? You get the ones that go around, hey, can I hold something? And you say, I don't get, and then before you even say it, they just run off because
Hmm.
they're just like they either want a yes or a no answer. And those are the kids you probably don't want to have holding stuff because they were the ones that got done holding 10 other tables before yours.
Hmm.
So and then you have the kid that always sucker me, where they have to have their parents tell them, and they're super shy. I always feel really bad for those kids because, you know, I'm not a very outgoing person either, as far as I don't like going out of my way to, talk to strangers either. So I kind of get that too. So I'm kind of more of a sucker for that, you know,
Yeah.
as long as I didn't actually see them going around touching other people's stuff. And then you always have like Germex, at
Yeah.
least Germex, I wouldn't, and it's not a surefire way to prevent anything, but it at least helps you sleep a little bit better. I've been
Yeah.
thinking about trying to find I want to prevent my show displays, but that can get or tables at shows, but that can get kind of sketchy because if bug guys catch you do it and you're spraying down your stuff and they're near you, they're going to complain to the show guy, the people running the show, to
Hmm.
say they're spraying chemicals, that'll kill my bugs,
Yeah.
if I'm too close or they're too close to me or something like that. So
How far was the commute out to Bend when you were there?
I was at 25 minutes. It wasn't very far.
That's not
Yeah, it
bad.
was pretty close.
And then how
So,
far was it once the facility got moved?
oh Jesus, that one would have been like 2.5 hours
Oh
or
Jesus. Yeah.
something. So I
Yeah,
wasn't.
screw
He
that.
tried it. He originally tried. He wanted me to move out there with him, but I kind of wanted to do my own thing at the time. At that point I was like, I kind of want to just do my own thing, essentially. And kind of around, it's funny too how mentoring can work. So around that time that um Ben Pat, well, actually I found a new mentor because so I told you I got on the ball python craze, right? I was buying a bunch of ball pythons and all that. And I was doing that all the way up to about 2015. I was still buying ball pythons, but 2015 I kind of hit this like I don't know what is it, just a kind of had a thought in my head, and maybe it was me wanting to try to figure out how to do some type of business. So I always looked at other breeders, and I noticed at the time, around that 2014, 15 era, is a lot of the big breeders at the time had multiple different species. They weren't just like compared to like now. Now you're even seeing it. Now you're seeing where a lot of ball python people are getting other stuff, and I have a whole different opinion on this. What's going on now when it comes to this, but or that, but yeah. So I was looking at like because I always had a diverse collection. I always had other species, but it never really was my focus to get a bunch of other species. At the time, it was ball pythons. Well, I was, you had Bob Clark, who was known for his retics and berms. You had Ben, who was known for his ball pythons, retics, and his anacondas, even. You had uh, Pete Call, who was known for boas and balls, and you had Dave and Tracy, that was known for balls. A lot of pythons, really, but primarily probably balls, boas, and bloods. And Barchek was known for a diverse collection. All these breeders, and you were just known for this having a multitude of different species. Well, I go, I probably should have something other than just ball pythons. So, and something I was trying to think, what would be my other species? Because I didn't just want to get because that's the problem I'm seeing now with people is they want to get what's popular now in another species. Me, I was like, what do I really like? That's how I base anytime I'm going to get anything is do I actually like it? Is it the hype or is it the actual species itself? Because I was sitting there thinking, I was like, man, what was it that I really like? And I thought about it and I go, I always had carpet pythons. And then at the time too, I was listening to NPR quite a bit. And if you know Nick too, and you listen to him on these other podcasts, he's definitely a salesman. And then when you talk to him in person, he's definitely a salesman. So I remember I talked to him a few times, and boy, I got hooked on the Morelia train. I really got hooked bad on all carpet pythons. There wasn't like one in particular I liked over the others. I liked them all relatively equally, And then I got on this huge carpet craze and stuff. And I was telling this to some other people is the funny part is about Nick. Nick loves shitting on the ball pythons and the ball python community and all that. And I tell him, I go, all this money I spent with you was with ball python money. Like it was just funny. He'd he'd get a kick out of it. But yeah, I was looking to get that, and then I think so. I would consider someone like Nick was a mentor too. Like Nick was a. I had someone like Ben, and Ben had a different mindset than say like Nick. Nick was. There were two different people that had very interesting points of views on the hobby, and then what happened? Something happened where I think I started picking up like a few miscellaneous stuff that weren't carpets from Nick, and then then I got I picked up a pair of group of three female white lip pythons, northerns that I got from Ben, who got from you might know him. He was Chris. He's out in Florida. He was a retic breeder. Chris from Mystic Reptiles. He's not in it
Doesn't ring any
anymore.
bells.
He's not in it anymore. Ever since Florida banned the retic stuff, I think he had to sell off all his retic stuff, and I think he's I think he's out of it. But he was known for his retics, and then he was known for like white lips, rings, and like Angolan pythons. And Ben picked up some white lips from him. Ben ended up I don't know, he was wanting to focus more on his ball python, so he just gave them to me for snake credit or whatever. So I took the three females. Well, obviously you need a male, right, to breed them. So, and I was kind of like, I kind of want to see if I can find captive bred, because it wasn't like it was unheard of to get captive bred white lips at the time. And then that's when I came across Ryan Young. Ryan Young, I know you're familiar with him with your Timors.
Yeah.
And I got hooked up. And then, because Ryan's more of just a python guy, I wouldn't call. He's not just Nick. Keeps a bunch of different species too, but you primarily think of carpets when you think of Nick.
Yeah.
And Ryan, I just think of pythons. Well, then I start talking to Ryan. He kind of became almost another mentor, especially when I start building this building. It's very similar to the way Ryan's rooms are. So then I got hooked on just having a bunch of different pythons, because boy, learning a bunch of different interesting characteristics or morphology or natural history or their ecology in general, just about of all these different pythons, just became super interesting to me. And it didn't just it didn't just isolate you to thinking one way. Like if you're a ball python guy, you tend to just think one way, or a carpet guy tends to just think one way, or a scrub, just someone who keeps one maybe two different species. They kind of just think one way. And even when those guys do get other species, I notice, and I fell into this too, is like, because I was a ball python guy, you just think, well, I'll just treat it just like a ball python. Then you come to find out maybe the way you kept your ball pythons weren't the most optimal way, and that's what a lot of Ryan taught me a lot. Ryan's a real wealth of knowledge. So I think,
Yeah, I've called him before when I was like having like like you're having like an internal conversation with yourself and like, God, I don't know what to do here, and going back and forth on just some way to keep, and you're getting all these inputs, and everybody's got a different opinion. And I just like the way that his mentality is just like, well, what are you doing right now? And what are the animals doing? And if the animals are happy, then just keep doing what you're doing. Stop worrying about, changing everything based on what other people are doing.
Right. Yep.
And that's it's good to have people like that you can reach out to, and they're willing to help you out and give you some advice.
Yeah. And if you just gotta be able to fix your situation, that, because what was it? Like this building, I emulated it really similar to Ryan. Like it's ambient. I run only ambient. I might run a little bit heat here and there for like either gravid females, or sometimes during the winter, I did notice, like heating is a little more difficult, especially with depending on the racks. If you're keeping stuff in racks, like I could see why Ryan, for instance, uses a lot of ARS racks, open air racks, because they seem to heat up and dissipate heat easier than, say, like a enclosed PVC rack. Like I use a lot of animal plastic racks because I'm just an animal. It kind of harkens back on how I came up. Ben was known as the animal plastic guy. I became an animal plastic guy. Something like that. It's just old habit, I guess. So, yeah, I noticed like ambient. That it works a little bit different depending on the like cages. It doesn't seem to make a difference with as far as ambient or not. Like if you use PVC cages, but for whatever reason, the rack system, I don't know if it's because it has to go through the PVC racks and then go through a tub compared to like, the cages. It's just the ventilate, and the cages have ventilation compared to the rack itself. They do make racks called economy racks that are open air, but they kind of look, I'm not gonna lie, they look kind of trashy. No offense to people who have those racks, but they just don't. Ben had them, and they just didn't look very good to me personally. But if you're going to keep ambient and you want PVC racks, I do recommend open air racks. That's something if I would have thought about. I don't know how much I would have changed because, like I said, I'm a diehard PVC guy. I'm not a big fan of the metal racks. They just don't look. I have a few ARS racks, but I'm just not a fan of the way they look. They just, I don't know. They just don't look that cool to me compared to like a white PVC or your black. I'm usually not a fan of black, but I guess because you decked yours out, they look real pretty.
Yeah.
With all the plants and the naturalistic looks, it looks real sharp looking. But like if I did it, most people when I see them with black PVC, it's real basic.
Paper. Yeah.
Paper, aspen with a half log and a bowl.
Yeah.
That's usually real basic. So I never was a fan of the black PVC. And like I said, I truly believe this is because I worked with Ben, and Ben only liked white PVC, and he only went with animal plastic. So I guess I just fell into that same thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I started doing more of the plants and stuff. Like I did these palms here. I got them from Hobby Lobby, and then I made bases out of plaster of Paris. I just mix up the plaster and then just stick the plant in. So it's got this really rock solid base, so it won't get flipped over if it gets crawled on.
Right.
And those are hides. Like I was thinking like, how am I going to get like bigger hides for like the Timors and stuff like that so they can feel secure? And I don't really have to worry about it because they actually like just going under the palms and just they feel totally safe and hidden back there. It's kind of cool.
Oh yeah.
And so when I go to feed them, I'll just put the rat out and bam, they bust out of the palm like a velociraptor and destroy it.
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, I shit. So I had a rough scale python female. She's an older female. 2016 is when I got her in 2017, but she's a 2016 animal. And it was end of last year. I kept her in a CB70 tub. Well, whenever I got this building put up, I call it the Great Wall of Morelia, where it's just a wall. It's filled with just all these
I've seen
cages
it.
of just carpet pythons. Right. Well, I had the rough scale in the cage, and I really just wanted to put her in a cage so I could see her because, rough scales are cool animals. Well, she decided that was too much change. And she decided she just didn't want to eat. And I go, you're kidding me. So suddenly, or after I try to stick it out, see if I could just get her to eat at some point. Well, she got to the point where she would kill and leave the rats. I don't think she wanted to eat because of the open front you could see, and I think that just made her nervous. So she went 9 months without eating.
Jeez.
She would kill the rats, but she wouldn't eat them. She definitely got lean, but she didn't look horrible. It wasn't like she was like going to keel over at any minute. But
what was she on? Like rat pups?
No, she's on like small rats. She's an adult female, so she had age to her. I know plenty of people who keep rough scales in cages. I think it was just two situations. One was I just took her from the tub, walked her right outside, stuck her in the cage, and that was it. I didn't, I know there's other ways. Like if I was able to fit the CB70 in there, I would have just stuck the tub in there with the hide and everything and just let her choose what she wanted. But I'm not gonna lie, the cage wasn't that big. It was just taller, so you couldn't stick a CB70 just right in there. So and then she was already an adult. I think there's something about if you drastically change an adult's caging around like that, I think it'd be pretty stressed, depending on the species. Because I moved all those carpet pythons, and carpet pythons they didn't phase them at all. It didn't. You threw them from a tub to a cage, and it just didn't bother them at all. They just went on like their day was usually going. Didn't phase them. But yeah, they. I think, and the rough scales are typically more timid too. I know they could be a little more shy and recluse. They don't more of a recluse.
I kind of derailed you. So she was 9 months without eating.
Yeah, 9 months, and then I just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm putting her back in the tub. Put her back in the tub. She went into a shed, and then right after that, ate a small rat.
Really?
Killed it and ate it, and I just go, fuck.
Yeah.
I really wanted to get you in a cage because I just wanted to look at you. And it, like I said, I'm not saying, they just do better in racks, but I think she was raised most of her life in there.
Yeah.
And I just don't have the right setup to just stick the tub in there and let her figure out what she wants. But,
Now you said, you kind of talked about observing different behaviors from ball pythons. Do you keep all your ball pythons in racks, or do you have some in larger display cages?
Okay, so right now I keep in racks. I'm not gonna lie, I keep in racks now, but I have some genuinely giant ball pythons. Like I have some old. Well, to me they're big. Where you look at them in a CB7, you go, it's like you just hardly fit in here. So we got to figure something out. So I've been thinking, and I've always thought that, like, especially with new ball python breeders, because let's face it, people, like, especially nowadays, it seems like you're not just a ball python keeper. You got to be a breeder. And if you're going to be a breeder and you're going to keep it small, I really recommend you keep like this personally, because there's nothing more boring than having one rack system with snakes you can't see. That's just boring, and it just ruins the experience. So
yeah,
I would recommend, this is a cage style. Believe it or not, Justin Julander, and then the local guy to me had these kind of cages. And I'm surprised it never really picked up with the ball python communities back in the earlier days. It was like a combo rack cage where the top was a cage, and then the bottom was a shelf underneath connected to a tunnel that connected the tub and the rat, or the cage and the rat, or tub.
Mm-hmm.
So you still had the tub, and then right above it was a cage, and the snake can access both ends of it. Huh. And I was always surprised that never picked up with the ball python community, and I'm trying to figure out a design that would work, because I'd like to use, like, for the females, a CB70, but then keep them in whatever size cage that would kind of correlate with a CB70. So it's kind of an easy transit, because you don't want like this big cage and then one little rack system, because then you got to find all this other stuff or other things to support the side of that cage. But if you built the cage similar to like a rack style, well, you get this little square opening, but huge depth. And then, if it's 2-3 feet deep, that's going to be a bitch to clean up the back and all that. So you got to find a way to somehow to make it work. I don't know. There's like some, but I plan on trying to do something, especially with my big old females, at least get them in cages. Cause there's some beautiful combinations in ball pythons, and it's a shame you don't get to see them ever unless you put them in a cage or something. But most of the time they're in racks for most people. So
yeah, I have a spot nose clown, and she's in a 4x2x2, and she uses it, and she actually climbs around, and she's got a lot more personality. And I just got a red stripe, yellow belly. I don't know. I want to make a Pompeii. So
Oh
fill in the
man, I didn't
blanks.
know you had all these ball pythons.
No, I
I've
only
heard
have
you talk.
two. I only
Okay,
have two.
man,
I've
you're
got
very. Phew.
the spot nose clown was our first snake, because I had gotten out of the hobby for a long time, and then I wanted to get back into it, and she was the gateway drug. It was
Right,
like, yeah,
right.
we're gonna get one, nice ball python that'll be the family pet. And I was looking at my records. It was literally like 14 days later I got a boa, and then 14 days after that I got, and it just snowballed. But yeah, I just got this male from Justin, and he's in the quarantine rack right now, and I'm excited to. I think I'll probably put him in like a 3x2 by 1.5
Right,
long
right.
term. I think that would be a good
Oh
size
yeah.
for him.
Unless you get them huge, because I've gotten females that end up being males pretty damn big, and you're like, God, these things get enormous. But uh, males,
Don't
I mean,
scare me.
well, in ball python, any python really, if generally speaking, if the species combats, there's a good chance of that male can get pretty damn big.
Yeah,
So because the whole concept of combating is the bigger male wins, right? So you got to elevate in your size to be able to fight off. Because if you're not going to be very big, like say like with I think like with like diamonds or like even South African rocks, where sometimes it doesn't benefit to be very big. So then you can do more of the communal breeding,
hmm
compared. So ball pythons, it's you definitely can get males pretty damn big. I just choose not to because just with all speed. And there's a couple reasons, mainly because it was space wise, food wise, and uh, what's the other reason? There's another reason, but there's a few different reasons why I just and like maybe not so much with like ball pythons or species that have quite a bit of morphological differences that can have morphological differences from each other. But when you're
hmm
doing like water pythons, white lip pythons, stuff like that, where they look almost identical, I want to be able to pick the male out right away.
yeah.
Especially with like my white lip pythons, when I pair them up, I want to pick them out right away. So I usually purposely keep the male a bit smaller than the females.
Yeah, my Timors, I have pictures that Ryan had when they were for sale. I have those saved in my phone, so that way I can be like, "Is this?" Let me look at the head scalation and find out if this is the
Right,
male or the female. Because
right.
goddamn,
Yeah.
they look identical.
Oh yeah, I purposely like with the Timors. My male is he comfortably fits in a CB70. He's tiny. He's eats small rats. He's itty bitty. And then my female, on the other hand, she's a monster.
Mm,
She is. I mean, she's probably that big
holy
around.
shit! How
She's
long is she?
she's probably 6.5 feet, 7 at the most, somewhere
What
in between
size?
there.
What size enclosure is she in?
Well, right now she's in a boa tub. I'm trying to get her into an enclosure, but I'm not gonna lie. That's one species I'm a little nervous to move because they're kind of nervous. They're such a bipolar python, man. At least the ones I got, they're very bipolar. They can go from flighty to defensive, from peeing to striking, all
Mm,
in just seconds of each other. It's like they'll go like if I get them out of their tub and put them into the holding tub, they'll get real flighty. They'll pee on me. Well, once they're in that holding tub, it's like they build up enough courage that now they're just like, all right, now I want to stand and fight. Well, that female, she's big enough where she bites you, it's not going to feel pleasant. So
yeah.
she can be horrible to deal with. But I'm trying to work on getting her into something bigger because they're a pretty active snake too. So they definitely benefit with more room. But like I said, I'm a little nervous because she is an older animal too, so I'm a little nervous. She's going to do the rough scale thing and decide, I just don't want to eat.
So I think out of the three I have, one's two and the other ones are over a year old now, like somewhere around there. And I know I put the 2 year old right into a 4x2x2 and he did great. No
Right.
issue at all. And then I tried it with one of the 1 year olds and he didn't eat, so I put him right back in the tub. I was like, "Yep, we're not
It's
gonna
weird.
we're not going to screw around with this. Now the female, she is so food hungry, like just food happy, just totally psychotic
Right.
when there's a route out. And she'll come out the front of the cage, and I threw her in a 4x2x2, and she kept eating, didn't have any issue. So
Yeah.
it was just that younger male that had an issue.
That my male gave me that same problem actually not too long ago. I went to move him up to a bigger tub, and he went off food. Well, I can't remember. He either went off food or he was doing that kill it and leave it thing. Oh, I hate when snakes do that. And so I moved him back down to something smaller, and he ended up doing fine. But I think it seems like it's a pretty individual base, because I do it with ball pythons. I'll take a ball python female that's like, I don't, like a 200, 300 gram female, and I'll put her right into a CB70, which is equivalent to like a 40 gallon, 20, 40
Mm-hmm.
gallon tank, something like that. And they do fine. A
Yeah.
lot of them will, seems like if you can do it to them young and small, as long as it's not, they're established and young and small, I feel confident doing it with a snake that hasn't even shed or eaten yet or nothing like that. But if you do it to them with a relatively decent time, they seem
Yeah.
to do fine with the move. I see more issues when you start moving to big adult animals. Typically, females seem to have the hardest time adjusting, depending on the environment and how drastic. Because I moved. I mean, everything went from my original reptile room went from having hot spots and having a gradient to just going ambient. They just went from boom one to the other. They went from having virtually, I mean, absolutely horrible lights, as far as like natural light coming in, and
Mm-hmm.
like a flash, oh, not flashlight, a regular standard switch light that's just on and off whenever I'm in the room, to getting on a 12-12 light cycle, or 10-14, depending on the time of year, and having a big window on each room so they get a bunch of natural light. And I
Yeah.
don't keep things in solid colored tubs either. If they are in racks, they're in like clear tubs, so they can at least get some sort of visual, mainly for me too, because I don't want to open something I can't see where they're at and have something
Yeah.
flying out on a finger or something. So yeah, I yeah, that's, I've noticed, seems like females seem, for whatever reason, males, I don't see too often males have issues with moving them. They seem to be more, that it is weird with the Timors, like you said, and even me, I had that problem too. But
Yeah.
when I move my male in and out of my female's tub whenever it's breeding season, he doesn't seem to have an issue with it.
Well, and you know what I noticed too with the Timors, and I have a question for you as well after this. The Timors, it seems like if they're anywhere around shedding, whether it's like 3 days before they go opaque, or if it's 3 days even after they shed, mine will not. They aren't in the mood to eat. But once
That's
they
a
get like that week, like a week past shedding, then all of a sudden they're like, you couldn't give them a big enough food item.
Right. Yeah, no, that mine do that. I have a lot of pythons that'll do that. They'll just go off food whenever they go
Yeah.
get ready to shed. It's not just teamwork. I've seen it in a lot of stuff. Ball pythons, almost all ball pythons will do it. Maybe a few won't.
Yeah.
My Angolans, my short tails will probably still eat, but yeah. But there's quite a few species like carpets will do it. I've had a couple species do it. So yeah, that's
Well,
not
I mean,
nothing to
like I
worry
won't
about.
even offer during that period usually,
Yeah, neither
but
do
like
I.
But
Yeah,
it's funny. Like sometimes I'll offer one of my Timors, and if they'll just have zero interest, and all of a sudden then they'll go opaque. Like it's like 3 or 4 days before
yeah.
it's even visible that
Uh,
that they're going into
I've
shed.
I've seen that a few times. You can kind of almost start to tell when a snake, even before the eyes and the skin starts looking real pale or opaque looking, is they'll kind of get like especially in the face. You'll notice like their jaw will kind of
Hmm.
almost looks like someone's pinching it. It's
Yeah.
hard to explain, and it's not all of them. It's some of them. You'll
Sometimes
notice
they just
like,
look like shit too. Like their
yeah,
colors
some.
just look like shit.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's how I know when my Timor Python females get ready to shed. She'll sit in a tub, and she won't come out when she's shedding. Like, I haven't seen her in a few days, and I go, I wonder what she's doing. So I pop open the tub, and
Yeah.
she's in the smaller tub in her lay box kind of tub, just all knotted up and stuff because she's getting ready to shed.
Now, my question I had for you about the Timors, you said they're real bipolar and all over the place. Have they always been that way?
Yeah,
Like
since they were
since you
little,
first?
pretty about
Okay.
the size of yours, I would say. Yeah, they were
Wow.
probably
Okay.
about mine were just really it was weird. I mean, they would go from pooping on you to just all right, that didn't work, so I'm gonna turn around and bite you next. And that female, I mean, she has a head on her, so I wouldn't want to take a bite from her. She would put a hurting on you for sure if she bit you.
So
So
that's kind of cool about Ryan's Timors. They don't bite. They
yeah,
don't they don't get defensive. They do piss like crazy.
yeah,
But at the same time, I've said this a million times. I do everything I can to keep them socialized because
yeah. I don't. That's probably why.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I always want to be able to handle them. I have been bitten once, but it was while I was feeding, so no
Okay.
harm, no foul. It was
Right.
I
Right.
went in
Right.
there and I think I dropped the feeder and went to go pick it up with the forceps, and my hand went too close to the animal, and he gave me a bite.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but yeah, it's they don't get too defensive like that. They do pee, but if I take them out like once a week and spend 15 minutes with them, that goes away. So then
Yeah.
I can take them out and they don't. But man, it's terrible when they piss, man. It's crazy how much they piss.
Yeah. They pee, but like anytime they do it, it's I have to say one of the worst animals when it comes to either that musking or peeing on you. My scrub python can be kind of bad as far as pungent, how strong that smell is.
Yeah,
Oh my god, the scrub python! I think out of almost all the pythons and the few boas I keep, that was probably the worst when it comes to smell. I mean, it would like
yeah.
I was like took maybe take a step back and just like wow, I didn't something so small could have such a pungent smell to it.
What kind of
So
scrub is it?
Southern, one of
Okay.
Ryan's oh my god, I'm drawing a blank on the name. You know what I'm talking about though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's the one he had a year or two ago.
Hmm.
So no, they're cool. They're I mean they'll come flying out at you like when they're hungry or they think they're getting fed, which is typically I do at night, and they'll come. I mean she'll come straight out at you. I mean it was pretty similar to a retic. So if the retic will come with the mouth open, the scrub kind of comes out with typically with the mouth closed, but is wanting to look to see what's going on. So
Just see what's up.
yeah, at least see if there's the opportunity of eating. The retic just goes, I'm just bite first and ask questions later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they can be pretty wild. I love watching videos of them feeding and the way that they come shooting out of their cages and everything is crazy.
oh yeah, no, that's impressive. That's for
The
sure.
Do you have any are any of your ball pythons like really eager to eat?
Oh yeah, I got a couple that'll come out and latch up. I've actually one of the most painful bites I've ever had was from a ball python. I
Really?
was at Ben's place and I was cleaning a lot of his babies and sub or juvenile stuff. Well, he had this juvenile. It was just a wild. It was probably het for something, but I don't. It was a wild type animal, and I was holding it, and it was one of those right before you got to hold it. It was kind of real. It had that quick fidgety head look to it, or to it, and it would snap a little bit. But usually, when you grab a bull python, it just almost almost immediately shuts off for the most part when it comes to that food response they have or
Hmm.
can have. And I was spot cleaning its tub, and I had the snake in my hand down here. All of a sudden, I think I felt a slight, like a slight squeeze, and suddenly I get bit on the back of the hand, and it wasn't just it was bite and squeeze. This thing bit and it crumpled up all these veins in the back of my hand. Oh my god, it was the most
Mm.
annoying feeling. It hung on for like 10 minutes. I mean, this thing would not. I ran it underwater. I try to peel its little mouth off, but it was like I said, it's so loose up here skin wise that it just was able to, just move my skin along with it. And I was like, oh my God, this is so annoying. It's like, man, I'm not gonna lie, I'm thinking about just drowning it in some water or something till it decides to let go or
Yeah.
something like that, because it was painful. Like as far as where it was biting at, it actually bruised my hand a bit.
I
So
bet. Yeah, well,
yeah, but
they're stout animals. I mean, they're
oh
thick and
yeah,
muscular. They're
oh they
strong
can,
little snakes.
oh they're definitely powerful snakes. Like I people call I hear people make fun of ball pythons and talk about like, oh, we don't give them big rats because we're afraid they're just going to get hurt or something like that. I'm like, do you know what a ball python will eat in the wild?
Yeah.
Do you know what a Gambian pouch rat is?
No.
It's a gigantic 3-pound rat. They use them in West, or no, it's near Angola and stuff like that. They use them to search out mines, like landmines and
Really?
stuff. They'll have them because rats are intelligent animals, man. So they'll have these animals because they're just light enough to not trigger the mines like the dogs usually would. So they use them. But Gambian pouch rat, I mean, they're bigger than your jumbo rats. Well, ball pythons will eat those. So I
Holy
laugh when
shit.
people think ball pythons can't eat something big. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I will give my 1,500-gram girl some retired breeder rats.
Yeah.
I'll give them retired breeder rats every so often if I have,
Yeah.
and they will eat them with gusto. If they're hungry, they'll eat them.
Yeah.
They are pythons. I think ball python people forget they're pythons, and they will eat big prey items if you give them them. You
Yeah.
know,
The thing I get
so
the thing I'm most worried about getting bit by is my Argentine boa because
oh
it's like a shotgun blast when she grabs the rat. And every
yeah,
time I feed her in a bin because her rats are big and they're usually wet, because I have to
right.
thaw them out in water and so I don't want them grabbing all that bedding and everything. And so I put her in this bin, and whenever I open the bin, her mouth just opens and she flails
Oh
like
yeah,
she's so keyed up. And but it's kind of funny. She's trained at this point where I open up her cage with the bin there open, and she goes into the bin, and then I put the lid on. And usually, like she'll go halfway in and then hang out, but I'll put the rest of her in there. And yeah, whenever I feed her, it's just bananas the power that
oh
she
yeah.
has.
Boas compared to pythons are so much different. Like strength wise, I tell you what, if you Ben had an 18-foot retic, she was about 150 pounds almost somewhere in there. She's a big ass snake. You're talking a snake. Let's see, about that big around on the thicker part of her body. And I'm not joking. He also had 11-foot anathoristic anaconda that was probably a little bit lighter. I mean, she was probably equal girth. I mean, she was at least 100, 110 pounds. She was big too.
Mm.
And that anaconda just so much stronger than the retic. They might look like deflated tires when they sit there in anaconda, but I mean, I've seen one spin the head off of a 5-pound rabbit. She hit the rabbit so hard she took the head right off.
Jesus.
I mean, it's no joke. I'm so glad those anacondas he had were fairly mild mannered because boy, if they were that size and as mean as some of those retics were, it would have been horrible. It would have been one of
Yeah.
the oh my god, it would have been bad. That's why like when I see people throwing an anaconda around their neck, it's like, boy, that thing like if it wanted to and it had the you know just didn't want to deal with you that day, it could almost pop your head off. I mean, it's almost no joke how strong, and that goes for boas in general. I mean, a boa constrictor compared to like something like a carpet python or a scrub python of equal size, that boa is just the power of that animal is just very, very different in
Yeah.
comparison. But I sometimes wonder if that's because of what they eat more of. If they eat more, like if anacondas and the boa constrictors are eating more reptiles or reptilian, having more of a reptilian diet. Because I have
Hmm.
noticed stuff like even in pythons, like you know the strength of like a blackhead or a woma is a bit different than say like a a ball python or more of a mammalian eating python of the
Hmm.
same size. You know, their muscle tone's real different. I wonder
Yeah.
if boas are fairly similar, where they eat mammals, but their primary diet's usually like either iguanas or birds or caiman and
I think it
anaconda
was
cases.
I think it was Travis Johnson that was telling me about the an Argentine perched up in a tree, like with it, like grabbing an eagle out of the air.
I saw one in a book. I saw one that was sat up in a tree, and it was it might have been one that eaten or ate some sort of bird of prey. But I saw one where it just posted right up on a very top of a tree, just sitting there. So
Yeah,
I mean, they'll definitely. I mean, I've seen that in rattlesnakes too. They'll just
really.
sit right up in a tree, 20 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
You know,
That's speaking of strong snakes. That's the short tails too. Just the amount of power that they have. And
yeah.
that's the thing I'm working on right now is what direction I want to go with those, because I feel like it's inevitable, and I'm just looking at all the different bloods that are out there and trying to figure out
Oh
what I
yeah.
want.
There's some cool
It's
stuff out there.
it's hard. It's hard
I
to
tell
decide.
I tell people I almost never buy a different species. Ball pythons were kind of the outliers because I started with them. It's hard to say why, but I have normal wild caught ball pythons too. So I
Hmm.
that are het for absolutely nothing. I mean, I'm talking wild collected female ball pythons,
Oh wow.
not non dinkers either. They don't even look that. They're pretty, but they don't look like anything different.
Yeah.
So I I usually don't buy a species based off of Morse, but I will say something about the goldeneye back in the day just really did it for me. So
Yeah.
whenever I was able to afford one at the time, I hit up Nick Bottini, who seemed to have some of the best goldeneyes I've ever seen. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, those T positive goldeneyes were just phenomenal. I mean,
Mm,
it's wild how something could look like that. I go,
I know.
that's just. I mean, and they're very similar to carpet pythons, where they don't look like much as babies, and then when they get older, they kind of, they turn into something pretty different or pretty colorful for the
I
most
didn't know
part.
that. I had no idea. And so I was kind of going through and looking at I was talking with Matt Minatola, and I was looking at some of his baby reds, and then he started showing me the pictures of adults and some holdbacks and everything. And I'm like, damn, those things look nice. They get
Oh
really
yeah,
nice.
oh yeah. He's been catching my eye with those Borneos, some of those striped ones, those
Yeah.
clutches he got not too long ago. I love that bright orange head into that like tannish color. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of those orange heads. Those and the pumpkin heads have been catching my eye too. I just recently had
Yeah.
someone message me about one of my Sumatrans, and I was like, you got some pretty cool pumpkin heads. I wouldn't mind hitting you up for at some point, maybe. You
Yeah.
know, I just got
Yeah. His stuff is next level, and Kara and Botini, they all have such incredible animals, and
oh yeah,
Elijah too. I mean,
yeah,
I just keep going on Morph Market like every day and looking and favoriting animals, and but yeah, the
right.
golden eyes and the 007s are some of my favorites, but I also just reds, that are
Yeah,
just bred to be.
I'm thinking about hitting up. I picked up a Curtis, a Sumatran short tail from her Kara a couple years ago, and I've been looking at some of her different bloods or different lines of bloods, and I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
some of those bright, clean reds and oranges, and then you have that silver or gray head that
Hmm.
just gives it that contrast. I mean, Jesus, some of them are just phenomenal. I mean, just yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny, I was talking to Matt, and I told him, I was like, don't tell anybody, but I'm not that big into striped animals,
Oh,
I like
really?
yeah, for some reason I like a really broken up dorsal pattern,
uh,
and I know it doesn't make any sense.
no, you probably like the banded traditional jungle carpets, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, yeah.
I really do. The
They're neat.
And I said the same thing to Kara, and she's like, no, I breed for spots and dots too, you know. And she said that
Spots and dots too.
yeah, she tries to like
Uh,
kind of reduce the dorsal pattern on some of her lines and get more like sort of as broken up as possible. So it's
right, right.
so she gets me.
Yeah,
That's fine if nobody else
yeah.
does.
No, I'm with you. I get it. There's some species like oh shit, look at the ball python people. They're obsessed right now about this zebra morph that's essentially just a banded animal. If you've
Yeah.
ever seen it, just a banded type animal. I don't know. There's something always about the stripes and contrast. Like even with ball pythons, like puzzle and tri-stripe are some of my favorite mutations that are just more of a stripe type animal, you know, for the
Yeah.
most part. So that's why I don't know what it is. Carpet pythons are the same way. Uh, Short, like when I picked up my short tails, I made sure to try to get some of that, like the VPI and the Nick's line. I can't remember his line's name, but his line of stripes and his stuff, so I can try to make some sort of stripe stuff too. Because like I said, I am a sucker for the stripes. I do like the stripes.
Yeah.
So
I've got I think I'm up to 5 jungles now, and I'm always looking for just the most banded, you know,
you like
animal
that old
possible.
school look, huh? That's
Yeah.
what, at least when I think of the U.S. animals, I think of very banded animals compared to like now you're starting to see more. It's funny. It seems like when the carpet community wants to go on a trend, it's like everyone does it. Because I, for a while there, no one cared about stripes. Now people are starting to want to do stripes. Now I'm seeing more people with these striped animals popping out of the woodworks. Like, who was it? Like, I have some striped animals. Nick obviously does. And then you got like Riley, Scott, uh, you know, just a lot. I see a lot of people with striped animals. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny when it is funny. I noticed with the carpet community, it's like we all complained about not having those cool Australian striped animals. You know, with the big bold back stripe and stuff. Now
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I'm just seeing U.S. keepers with a bunch of
Yeah.
ones they have popped out of stuff.
Yeah.
So
If you want it, make it.
right, that's the way to do it. Right. Yep.
Yeah. So what kind of short tails do you have?
I just have a pair of Curtis, just blacks, the black face stuff, and because I'm a sucker for dark animals too. I love darker the better, man. I just
Hmm.
some reason I'm just obsessed with the dark stuff of all species too. I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, morphs or just the different phenotypes that are just tend to be darker. I just am more attracted to it. So work with a pair of Curtis, and then just a pair of one was Goldeneye, genetic stripe, Goldeneye, Het T positive, and then a visual version male of that. So the same thing, just with the visual T positive
Nice.
version of it. So, and then I don't know. I've been eyeballing some of the blood stuff. You know, I haven't been a big YouTuber for a long time, but I will say I've been some reason Elijah's videos have been catching my eye, and I've been looking at some of those Morris of stuff, and I've been. I'd like to get I like the pied stuff. I'm a sucker for pieds. I think pieds are cool, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I I don't know. I was listening to Matt Minatola and Elijah talk about that the pied blood. I think that yeah, it was the pied blood they were talking about. And apparently there was like I don't know. It looked like Sumatran to me, but they were I don't know. There was some rumor. Someone said it might be from Borneo, and I go, I don't know. That head was awfully like that silver gray that the bloods tend to have, the wild
Yeah.
type ones, anyways. So yeah, I don't know. I was looking at that, but you know, I would.
I like the pied berms. Those things are awesome looking.
Yeah, I've thought about it because I have two an albino and just its sister I got from Ryan, and that's a problem. I notice when it comes to the big snake people, it is really hard to get stuff that you know the history on. Because I tell you, they didn't back in the day when those morphs really popped up, and well, berms are technically before almost any of the other stuff. But granted, whenever the ball pythons came to the scene or hit the scene, it was just treat everything with a morph like a ball python. when everything is more of a complex rather than just one species with a bunch of different morphs. So
Mm-hmm.
trying to find stuff that's, as pure as you can get. It doesn't have to be locality specific. I hear a lot of people talking about locality specific animals, and I'm just like, I don't necessarily care too much about that. I'd rather know that it's pure, whatever it is. Like with the retics, like if I'm going to get a retic, I'd like it to be, I don't care if it's a Malaysian and a Sumatran cross, because those two animals are genetically identical. They used to be connected like 4,000 years ago, so not nearly enough time to speciate. There's actually genetically more of a difference between northern Sumatra and southern Sumatran retics than there is to, like, I can't remember exactly if it's northern Sumatra and Malaysia. I could be wrong, but they share more in common than they do with the animals on the same island because of mountain separation and stuff like that. So that's the hardest thing I found when it comes to these big constrictors. And relaying this back to like the Burmese, I really like the pied Burmese, but the problem with that is you just don't. It's hard to get the history of that because how that animal got into the hobby is a little suspect, if you know what I mean. We don't know if it came across the border or if it was. I've heard all sorts of stories about it, but either way, it's hard because you can only go so far on the history of that animal before it kind of disappears, what the history of it is or where it came from.
Yeah.
And like I said, the big snake community was horrible about keeping track of, was it crossed with the eastern retics or the Jampiensis or Saputrii or the New Florence animals, or Burms are kind of the same way. Just you don't know if they're from Southeast Asia or from Southern Sulawesi or something like that, where there are split species in those animals. So yeah,
I wonder when they got separated from the Timors.
the retics. Oh, that had to have been I think, what was it, 15 million years ago? I thought I heard. That's just a guess. That's just what I thought I heard. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think with northern green pythons and southern green pythons are almost as divergent as Timors and retics.
Really?
Not exactly, but it's not too far off. I mean, that's just how different those green pythons are from each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been interested in that kind of stuff. That's been something that's really been. It seems like the longer you get into it, you find all kinds of different things that pique your interest, and the evolution of some of these animals and how they become what they've become today is just so much more interesting to me. Like when I hear the retic people talk about all the retics being the same, yet if they were to look at the short tail complex, those animals are only 1.5% to 2% different from each other. Like the bloods, the short tail, the Sumatran short tails, and the Borneos are all fairly closely related to each other. Yet all the retic people think all the retics are pretty much the same thing, just different sizes. And I'm like, I just find it funny how certain communities will go, yeah, these are all the same, but yet these short tails are all different. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't be different. I'm just saying you should look at your retics and look at it with the same point of view. Chances are they are different. You just, whatever reason, you have the blinders onto it. So, and that goes for all kinds of species. Like whether you're talking the green pythons, the scrub pythons will certainly be next. Yeah, they'll be broken up just like the green pythons will be. I'm sure there are other species I can't think of off the top of my head that'll be broken up too.
Isn't there a really big ball python too?
That's just so what that is those seem to be animals that are just found near human society. There's an old video, there's a DVD called Ball Pythons in the Wild, and this guy catches a 5.5-foot male and a 6+ foot female, gravid female. And they pulled it out of this burrow. And when he pulls out and they back the frame up to get the full shot, you could see a house right in the back of this. So these animals are living real close to people that are getting these really big sizes. I mean, you see it in all kinds of species. You know, species that live closer to people tend to usually be bigger,
More
unless you're
trash,
talking.
more rats, more
Yeah,
prey.
unless
Yeah.
now when that changes is when, say, if it's a big constrictor. Now, when it's a big constrictor, not always, but sometimes the bigger animals get called off because it scares the locals, and then the
Mm,
smaller ones kind of take over. So, in a ball python perspective, you know, a 6-foot snake isn't nearly as intimidating as a 18-foot snake or whatever. You know, like
yeah.
some of those places where you see ball pythons, a lot of the rock pythons got exterminated from there because they just, you know, cattle, they'll eat their cattle and scare the locals more and stuff like that. So,
Did you watch that Smithsonian program they did on, I think it was rock pythons? Did you watch
yeah,
that?
was it the one where the mother was doing the maternally incubating and the
Yeah.
babies were, yeah, I saw clips of it. I don't think I saw the whole thing.
That was pretty cool. I really
Yeah.
appreciated that. And they tried to show like a different side to the snake, you know,
Yeah.
and they didn't paint them out to be these vicious, disgusting animals, you know. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
pretty
Right.
cool.
Yeah, that was the first species because that was that documentary was on Nettalensis, the South African rock. And that was the first species of python I got to see in the wild was a Nettalensis. Those are really cool pythons. It's a shame that they're functionally extinct in the hobby. Don't know if they're
Mm,
totally extinct in the hobby. And
yeah.
just whatever those closet keepers who say they have it just don't want to breed them or whatever it is. So,
Oh,
you
so there's
know,
people that are claiming to still have them?
there's people claiming it, and I know one of them too. It's one of those where you ask if they know anyone. They say we'll get back to you, and they say, well, we know someone. Either we know someone who knows someone, or we know someone, but they won't contact. They don't want you contacting them. They'll
Mm.
contact you. And I go, yeah, that sounds suspicious. But I don't. I've heard this like this. The problem. It'd be one thing if it was one or two people, but I've heard this from 4 or 5 different people. So apparently someone's out there, but they just I whatever reason. One of them I know the reason, but I can't legally say why because
Mm.
they not supposed to
Oh,
have it.
okay.
But yeah, it's but other than that, yeah, I don't they just yeah, that's a species that would be, you know, it's a shame that it just disappeared, but that was another one that a lot of people in the hobby, I don't think any of them really cared. And a Central African rock and a Southern rock are two different species, but most people just kind of lump them in as just rock pythons. But if you've seen two adults side by side, they look very different from head structure to coloration to size can be relatively similar, but just they just look very, especially in their heads, they're very different from each other.
How
You
big
know,
would you expect one of those to get?
which ones?
And either one of the African rocks.
Uh, uh, I think we talked about this not too long ago, but there's a size is such a phenotypically plastic thing, and particularly pythons, boas
Yeah.
too. But they don't typically, on average. I think the Central African rocks get bigger. They can get close to 5 meters,
Hmm.
and South African rocks or Nettalensis can get a little smaller. They still can get 4 meters. I mean, they can still get pretty good size. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
some real monsters, but there's a population in Niger in West Africa, which is one of the Central African python, the Sebes range, and they did a study on a group of them in that region, and they said for whatever reason, ones in this region tend to stay 3 meters, which is
Hmm.
9 feet. So they would rarely find anything over 3 meters there. So
Wow.
I go, huh, that's interesting. But I think that has to do with prey availability. You know,
Yeah.
why it doesn't make sense to get big if you're not getting big prey items. You
Yeah.
know,
So you
So
think it's so and yeah, we did talk about that, but I wanted to talk about it on here. So you think that if you feed larger prey items, and now are you doing larger prey items less frequently, or are you doing larger prey items with the same frequency for an animal to get bigger? And
it,
by bigger, I mean bigger and healthy, not
right.
not
Uh,
obese.
right. So man, this spans a huge spectrum. I'll try to nail so like Timor pythons. I got a question. Do you notice how fast they'll digest compared to other pythons?
It's ridiculous.
Like I've noticed, and I'm not joking. So when my female was roughly around the same size as like my carpet pythons, if I gave her like I don't know, like a medium large rat, let's say somewhere in that range,
Hmm.
the carpets you'll see that lump 2 to 3 days later, depending.
Yeah.
The Timor python, it was gone within that next day.
Yep.
I mean, this thing was digesting so much faster than any python. I mean, it was faster than retics. It was faster than olive pythons, carpet pythons, ball python. I mean, it would digest so fast. So whenever I would feed it the same frequency, same size prey items as I was doing the carpet pythons, it just burn through food. It was ridiculous. I've
Hmm.
never seen a python burn through food like a Timor python. It was the most impressive thing I'd ever seen. So I had to start giving her ridiculously large rats just to keep weight on her, just trying to breed her. And she would digest jumbo rats within, like, I'm talking retired breeder male rats. She was eating them and be done digesting that rat within 2 days.
Wow.
I mean, it was impressive. I've never seen something like that before. I mean, so there's like that scenario. And I've been fortunate enough to see Timor pythons in the wild. I saw them on Ranka Island, and it was hanging. And this will lead kind of to what one of my thoughts were on feeding and why I think we different. Like I said, when I was saying, when you keep one species, you're only in tune with that community, and then maybe if you talk to other people, that's usually the only bit of information you get from other species is just friends you talk to. And most of the time, chances are a lot of those guys that talk to other people about other species, they just don't correlate the two together or just don't think anything of it, so they don't make any connections. But when you keep a wide range of species, you start seeing these just certain things that just start in my head start piecing stuff together. So when I was hanging out, or when we went to Ranka Island, we went to a cave when it was at night. And we went to this cave, and it was midnight, so it was 12 o'clock there. It was pitch black, and this cave was filled with bats still. And I'm sitting there going, "Damn, this would be a fantastic food source or a spot to set up camp to eat because yeah, they're small, but if you can catch like you know 6 of them or whatever, that'd be plenty, or
Hmm.
whatever, whether it's 2, 3, 6 or whatever. I mean, I was shocked. This cave was just filled with bats in the middle of the night. You figure when you think of caves, you think, oh, bats would be all out at night. But in this scenario, we went to this cave twice and it was full of bats. It wasn't just a one-time deal. And I'm sure it's very seasonal too. Like during the rainy season, there's certain times of the year they might migrate to a different cave. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm not there year round. But that snapshot that was there, it was kind of eye opening. And Lord and behold, we came back right as soon as sunset, and we found a Timor python hanging around the cave, one of the openings of the cave. And I'm just like, damn. And it was a decent sized Timor. It was probably close to 6 foot, you know. And I was like, man, this thing, if it's set up camp here, I mean, it has a steady supply of bats just for however long they decide to stay there or whatever. And I mean, and then that led me to think about the Jampiensis clade, the superdor, so smaller
Hmm.
species of retics. And the guy I went to at the to Komodo Islands and stuff was Daniel Solis. He does a lot of these Indonesian or a handful of Indonesian trips. Well, he went to all, I think he went to all the islands with the super doors or the Jampienses are known to be on. And I would ask him, and he'd show me pictures too, and he'd be like, you don't get a whole lot of big ones. You might get 5, 6, he said 7 foot with some of the bigger ones maybe.
Wow.
But real thin, right? And then I listen, and he probably has 30 to 40 of them or more under his belt, wild caught ones. Well, then I listened to an NPR episode with what's his face, Cameron from Bushmaster. He went to Jampia, and he said he caught one or 200 of them, and he said he was finding 5 to 6 foot animals gravid.
Wow.
And he was saying, they didn't bring anything bigger than 6+ feet, little over 6 feet. And that just made me think, well, and then you start seeing all these people in captivity who get these, they just get these big old, any of the Jampians is like the Kalatoas, the Krampas, the Kalawatis or whatever. They get them all really big. They're feeding these animals pigs.
Mm-hmm.
Pigs. And Daniel and them said they almost, not probably exclusively, but for the most part, they're hanging out in these caves, and that's their primary food source. And they're probably eating multiple bats. Like when it's the breeding season for the bats, they're probably eating a ton of little bats. These bats are about the size of a, depending on the species, can be the size of a small, medium rat. Yeah, we're feeding them pigs, and you get these giant superdors. Like you're talking where people are in the U.S. captivity are telling people, they get on average 8 to 10 feet. And I go, it's like, I've never heard anyone thus far say they found anything over 7 feet. And that just made me wonder, well, what is it that's keeping these animals smaller, but they're still reproductive? And then why are the U.S. animals in that species huge?
Mm-hmm.
And I just started wondering, like, what correlates reproductive? What triggers reproductive? What's more likely to trigger reproductive? One big meal or multiple small meals? And then how does that correlate with size? And so I see it. And the one thing I hear a bunch of people, they're half starved, they're parasite ridden. Do you not think those retics and Sulawesi have parasites, yet they're eating humans? Yeah. I don't get what they're trying to say. Like and they're stunted and not getting very big because of that? No, dude, I'm sorry. When I hear people say that, I go, how come snake people are so inclined to put this perception on wild snakes always looking like shit? I'm not saying you can't get them. They don't look like shit. I've seen some that look like shit. But generally speaking, most of them don't look that bad. Girth-wise, size-wise. It just, in our heads, we think round. Everything needs to be round. If it's not round, it's unhealthy. Because look at it across the board in every animal. You don't look at lions and go, those animals look underweight. That 500-pound lion looks underweight. That 600-pound tiger looks underweight. That 400-pound gorilla looks anorexic. No, we don't say that about anything other than snakes. And then the people who form this opinion are people who are getting these huge imports in, that animals that were probably healthy and lean to begin with, but by the time they went through that few month stage of no food, no water, well, yeah, they probably do look like shit. But we're basing that off of, well, that just must be how they all are. It's like, no, if you've never actually seen these snakes in the wild, then that's why I take to heart very few hobbyist opinions when it comes to size and animals. Like this is going to sound bad, but if I'm looking to get into a species, when I talk to an expert, I think, okay, they breed their animal this size, so I probably need to knock at least 25 to 50% off that size. If it's a retic, maybe almost 75%, because people, I think they just. And then here's another thing I started thinking of, and I think one of the biggest sample sizes is probably ball pythons. So do you know what you don't see a whole lot of anymore when it comes to ball pythons? You don't really see a lot of these. You don't see 6 foot monsters like you might have back in the 80s and 90s and maybe early 2000s. And why I think that is because the hobby just transitioned over to like, all right, we're instead of feeding medium or even large rats, I'm just going to feed them a small rat or a small ASF or adult ASF, which is pretty equivalent to a small rat. And we're just going to feed them that every week or whatever, twice a week. Some ball python people do. And
Oh
you'll
my
notice
God.
you'll see ball pythons will get really fat, but they'll still stay around that 4.5 foot range. It's not this, and I don't want people to think, oh, they'll never grow. We still see animals grow with smaller meals, but it's a lot less than if you gave them a really big meal. It's to the point now where a lot of my own grow up stuff, I'll feed a meal. Like, how big are your Timor pythons?
Well, the ones two, and the other ones are just over a year.
And how big would you say they are if you had to guess? Well, what are you feeding them, right? Rat wise or whatever size?
All right.
Rat.
So after I talked to you, so the 2-year-old I was giving a weaned rat, and then but it was like you said, I would give it the weaned rat, and I'm not shitting you. Like 12, 18 hours later, you'd look at him and be like, did I like it doesn't look like I gave him anything.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
so I actually put him up to or maybe I put him on a weaned rat just now. Maybe I was doing a rat pup and then I went up to weaned rat, or I went to small rat. I can't remember, but now I'm actually putting a decent lump in him, and I see it for maybe 2 days after. And then but I feed him once every 2 weeks, you know, they're about, you know, whatever, 14, 18, you know, 10 days depending. So yeah, that's my, sorry for my long drawn out answer. The other ones are getting probably large mice to a rat pup, anywhere in
All
there.
right, now hold up to the camera because I'm trying to picture how big or round would you say they are? Like, give me a finger size if you had to guess.
Probably like that.
All right, now I'm not joking, and those are your 2023s.
Yeah,
I would be feeding those small rats.
Holy
I'm not joking,
shit,
dude. I could
dude,
show
you'd
you
see the skin between the scales.
Oh yeah, but here's the thing. This is what I do. I don't feed them like that. I only feed them that because I may not feed them for another month. I'll give them that meal, and that bigger meal will cause more length. And what are you trying to do with your younger animals? Trying to grow more length on them. I'm not really worried about weight because weight tends to come on more when they hit that mature age. You'll notice they'll put weight on a little easier than they would as a baby. So yeah, I mean, people would be shocked how big of rodents I'll feed young grow up animals compared to what I'll feed an adult animal. You know, like if I have I don't know, I have 2 9-foot mainland retics, and I will feed them. Right now, they're eating jumbo rats because that's pretty much all I have. But when I get the opportunity, I'll feed a 9-foot retic, like a 4-pound rabbit. You know, a big,
Wow.
I mean, a rabbit, people would be like, oh, I'd only give my 15-foot, you know, 80-pound, whatever snake that size of a rabbit. It's like, no, I'll give my smaller animals if I want growth on them. That's why I don't think the mainland people feed their snake right. Or like, well, they feed them. I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong, but most mainland people want these gigantic, for whatever reason. I don't know why you'd want a 20-foot retic other than for like a dick swinging contest. But what you do, you're not going to get a 20-foot retic by feeding it a fucking 5 to 10-pound rabbit or a 20-pound Flemish hare or whatever.
Yeah.
You feed that thing an adult goat. You feed that thing a foal or a calf. You feed that thing a 60, 80-pound prey item, watch how it grows. And it may not do it the first time, but once you start doing them a few times, that size meal, you'll start seeing that growth rate happen. Like the recent lady that was eaten by a 17-foot retic. An adult woman was eaten by a 17-foot retic. And most people would be afraid to feed it a 10-pound rabbit.
Yeah.
This thing ate an 80, 90-pound woman. give
Yeah.
or take. And
Yeah.
I'm like, if you want giants, you have to feed them. Look at you feed your not you, but they feed their Jampia retics just like they feed their mainlands. Well, no wonder why you get these gigantic mainland or super
Mm.
doors. But then you don't get these mainlands that get as big as these man eaters
Yeah. You see a lot of
because you
obese retics.
yeah, you all when you get these itty bitty heads and the big bodies, little
Yeah.
pinheads is what they call them. Dude, just back off the food. And what I wouldn't do, and this is something I wouldn't do, if you have one of those heavier set animals, don't just decide, oh well, okay, I'll feed it something gigantic. Give it a while because I
Hmm.
think you'll overwhelm that system because it already has a bunch of fat buildup anyways. And when you give it something that big, I think it'll have a heart attack. I truly now if it's leaner and more in shape, a healthier body size, then you can give it a really big prey item. But don't give it to right after you fed it a 20-pound rabbit like a week or two ago.
So, and just for anybody that's listening, when I held my hand up to the camera, I would say that they're probably around the size of a quarter, maybe a little bit bigger, around maybe like a
Yeah.
quarter to a $1/2, somewhere in
Oh,
there.
dude. Okay. So I have this Macalot python and this Savu python. They're probably about between a nickel and dime size, and I'll feed them small rats.
No, you got to be shitting me. You got to
Yeah.
send me pictures.
You have you ever you know what actually keyed me into a lot of this kind of growth rate was colubrids. Haven't you
Huh.
ever seen colubrids where you see a little black rat snake eat like a rodent or something that was just clearly like, wow, if we saw this in captivity, we'd be like, oh, this thing's gonna regurgitate and die.
Hmm.
No, that's I mean, we got rat snakes that will do this. And I know I've seen pictures of pythons eat. I mean, we all have. We've seen pythons eat really big prey items. And like I said, I will only do this because I think what happens is they'll eat big prey items as babies, use that for growth. Then at some point, those prey items might be what they get to reproduce, right? And so what I mean by that is I think what happens is why we keep getting our adults keep getting bigger and bigger is because we keep elevating their food size. We keep going up and up and up. Well, I think what happens is I think most reptiles is you've heard the boom and bust season, where food, feast and famine,
Sure.
feeding cycle. So generally, and this is why I think chondro people suffer from obese or gigantic green pythons is because I've been hearing recently people go, well, what are they eating in the wild? It's a rodent roughly around the size of a small rat. I've heard that numerous times. But what the thing is, we're looking at what is that adult animal size, but what are they actually eating? We got jumbo mice, but are they always eating jumbo mice? No, they're
Hmm.
probably eating all the offspring or juvenile subadults that are about half that size.
Hmm.
So they're probably eating because what's happens whenever breeding season is kicked off for a lot of these mammals, and what becomes the most abundant prey items? Those juvenile and subadult animals, not the adults. The adults probably didn't change at all as
Yeah.
far as population wise. I'm not saying they're not getting adults, but chances are they're getting a lot of the smaller prey items. You know,
Makes
they're
sense.
getting a lot of those, say like hoppers, the small adults or something like that. If when it comes to rodents, and that goes for a lot of species, like the like the Jampiensis retics are probably eating a lot of bats in one go. They're not eating one pig; they're eating 6 bats. And then people go, "Well, what's the difference between eating like one big prey item and a bunch of small prey items?" And this is what I don't know how logically this is what makes sense to me when it comes to feeding like this is if your body keeps getting too big from eating a bunch of prey items, at some point you will have to either eat something way bigger, which if you don't have, you can't do, right? And if you get too big, well, then you're going to keep needing more and more and more of those prey items to sustain yourself. So it doesn't make sense to keep growing in length. But if you're eating one prey item that is really big, well, then your body can afford to keep growing off that prey than it would be if you eat a bunch of small prey items.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But in my head, like when I see a rock python eat like a baby wildebeest or a subadult antelope, it eats that, and then you'll see these rock pythons just grow, like
Hmm.
just lengthwise. They'll just start they'll start growing. It's like the best example I heard, or word I heard used for this, was Casey Cannon and Nick Mutton when they were on that Fight Club podcast. They were talking about overfeeding in reptiles, and then Casey brought up a paper by Rick Shine with they were studying retics in North and South Sumatra, and they were talking about the retics would just and there was Rick Shine with water pythons too. You would notice like the smaller ones would do better. They could adapt easier to their environment than the big ones can. If something changed in that environment, those big prey items you were eating disappeared, well, you were shit out of luck. You were going to starve to death essentially. And that's what he said some of the big water pythons would do, would just starve themselves. And so with the retics, he was saying, Casey called what do you call it? Like a video game. It was like leveling up. And food, their bodies would level up every time they'd eat something big. That's why you see those like scrub pythons eating wallabies. Shoot, I listened to one with what's his face? Daniel Natush talking about, he sees a lot of them kill themselves trying to eat big prey items. And you see that. Well,
that happened here in Florida with the berms and the gators.
Yeah.
They've seen that numerous times.
That's why you have such giant berms, because berms I think they're taking advantage of the fact that most of these prey items don't know what a snake is that could eat them. They might look at it and go, oh, it's venomous. They probably don't know that, but they don't recognize a big Burmese python. So whenever they get taken out, like a deer or a bobcat or something, a bigger mammalian animal out there, then they get really stinking big. Because I think there was a field biologist that worked with a lot of Burmese pythons in their native range in Burma and all that, and he said the biggest one he personally ever caught in Burma and in their natural range was 13 feet. I mean, how many gigantic 16 plus foot berms have you guys got out there? Hasn't there been like at least a dozen?
Oh yeah. You could Google Florida Burmese python record, and you could go through the history of it, of just looking at the news articles.
Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to invasives and animals like that, you could see it in the Burmese pythons. I mean, just that size, I guarantee the berms in Burma would love to get that kind of food source, but those animals evolved to recognize what a Burmese or a python is that could eat them, so they're much more wary of it.
We're never going to get rid of the Florida python. They're here. They're part of the landscape now, and I'm curious as hell what they're going to look like thousands of years from now.
Right.
Like that.
Interesting.
That's so interesting, and like if the climate is changing and getting warmer, and it makes it so they can move further north in the state, like it's thinking about that over the course of like 100,000, 200,000 years, a million years, I really wonder, like, what will the American python, the Florida python, end up being, from an evolutionary standpoint?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because, like how a lot of animals migrated to different, like, continental what is it called, the exchange, where a lot of animals from Asia moved to the Americas, and then the Americas to South America, when these animals change. But now you don't have to worry about climate so much. Now it's people are those transmissioners that there's West African monkeys that whenever the slaves got brought over, are on islands in like the Caribbean islands and all that. There's some islands that have West African monkeys on them, and and
we have monkey populations here in Florida.
Yeah, you guys have monkey populations. Yep. There's all kinds of invasives, man. I mean, I don't think we like bitching about the berms and all that, but there's so many species out there that, I mean, look at our pets. Everywhere we go, we bring our pets with us, and unfortunately, some of them get out, some of them do well, and end up forming those cats, man. Cats are like rabbits. I mean, no
Well,
joke.
it, if you were to view humans as animals,
Oh,
Homo
I do.
sapiens,
Right?
I mean, is there a greater invasive species on this
Nope.
planet than Homo sapiens?
Oh
We
no.
go in, we destroy the natural environment, we
Yep.
bend it to our will, we alter it dramatically, and yet we bitch about cats and pigs and Burmese pythons.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I'm with you, man. We're just a bunch of animals. We just know we're animals. Well, some of us do. And I look at it like even when we wipe out other species, it's almost no different than what happens when other species get introduced or invade a different area. It's you self-preservation. You want to save your own species before you save anything else because it's
Hmm.
this instinct. Like that's why it's disheartening when we do it, but then I kind of understand from an evolutionary standpoint that's what all animals do. It's not just
Hmm.
I mean like uh bear dogs. Like when we had bear dogs in the U.S. and stuff, they were like an in between species between dogs and bears. They were a mixture of the two. They were digigrade, so they had a flat foot. They weren't or not digigrade. They were a plantigrade. They were a flat foot. So they were like a mix between the two, and they were the apex predators back in the day. Well, when cats were able to go across the land bridge and get to the U.S., they outcompeted the bear dogs because the bear dog
Hmm.
couldn't. They weren't evolved to hunt small prey items. They could only hunt the big ungulates. Well, whenever the dog or the cats came in, cats have they're probably the best predators. I mean, when you talk, they're almost perfect when it comes to being a predator. So
Yeah.
they were able to outcompete the bear dogs, and the bear dogs went extinct because of it. So, and it's not that the cats are worried about themselves. They may
Yeah.
not have known it, but instinctually, it doesn't make sense for you not to be. So it's kind of the same with us humans. I mean, we want to protect our offspring, and some of us still use archaic methods to want to do that, and that's wipe out other species. You know,
Yeah. I mean
it's
that's why
it's
the
unfortunate, but
yeah, I mean that's why the mountain lions and the panthers, they're mostly protected, and the brown bears are totally gone, and then we just hunted certain things to the point where they're gone, like
oh
the
yeah,
North
that
American parrot.
I
Very
mean, you
few people
guys,
know that there was a parrot in North America, and it's
right,
gone now.
right. I mean, even alligators, they were almost wiped out from
Hmm.
Florida
Yeah.
because of that.
So with the prey size, and with you feeding bigger items, and you don't seem to be like too concerned about it. Have you ever had any issues where that's come back to bite you, like regurgitation or anything
Yeah,
like that?
I've had so it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot with a certain species. I've heard it through the rumor mill, but apparently it's a bit more of an issue. Is Angolan pythons with regurgitation. Like for whatever reason, they seem to have issues with too much feeding. Like if you gave them a bunch of small meals. Well, I
Hmm.
haven't actually tried a bunch of small meals yet, but I would do maybe every couple of days. I'd feed them like a moderate sized rodent, and they
Hmm.
would just regurgitate after a
Hmm.
while. It's like they could only take so much before they had to spit it out, or if it was too big, they had to spit it out. I don't know if maybe I'm assuming they're probably more bird eaters, and
Yeah.
I've only fed them quail a few times, so I kind of want to do more experiments with birds, see how they just react to bird feeding
Yeah.
more or better. And I had one other instance where I actually this is most people would just stop doing it after something like this happened. So I had a ball python. She was a proven breeder, but she was on the smaller side. I don't weigh my ball python, so if I had to guess, she was 14 to 1,600 grams, and I gave her a a retired female breeder rat, which is still big, but it's not like the colossal males start looking like guinea pigs after a while. So they're not quite that big. They're still big, but they're not. They're probably. I don't even know how much they probably weigh. Maybe 300 grams or something. 3 to 400 grams, an adult female. And I gave her that rat. She killed it immediately. She took it, grabbed it, all that. And you have to be a kind of a good judgment of size. Like if you fed some big meals, you kind of know what an animal can take. So I don't think I've ever gave something they couldn't handle. So I fed her. This was later at night. I fed her, left because she wrapped it. So I figured it's good as gone. So came back the next day, and she was still all like that coiled look, like she was coiled up around it.
Hmm.
Said, "Fuck." Popped open that tub. She was dead, trying to eat it. Like in the
Oh.
so it. I've had it happen once. Out of all the big feedings I've done, I've had it. But what's to say that because it was a confusion ball python, the morph, and I've been
Mm.
hearing rumor mills that some of them are kind of odd as far as genetically wise. There's
Hmm.
something I don't know. Some people you hear all these rumor mills and ball python like this gene's known for this gene's known for that, but it's all anecdotal. None of it's really hard set. But she was like an acid yellow belly that just ate a. I gave her a big rat, no different than I would have gave any other ball python to. And it individual base, so maybe could have just been her. I never
Mm.
had problems with it with any other big animals or big prey. I mean,
Yeah.
even ambient too. That's another thing. People think, oh, if you keep ambient, you can't feed them these big meals. I would feed ball pythons, jumbo retired breeder rats, that 1,500 to 2,000 gram size range ball pythons, and I would feed them, and they stay ambient, so around 80, 82, and they're eating these big prey items, and they don't need a hot spot.
Wow.
And they're digesting it, pooping it out. They I sometimes wonder if that causes more issues if we give them a hot, especially like we keep things in small enclosures, yet we keep them on heat, like a 90-degree hot spot or whatever, and then the front of it's still relatively warm. And they when you temp gun a snake after it eats a prey item, particularly a large prey item, I mean it'll get 5 degrees warmer than the surrounding temperature.
Yeah.
The food bolus seems to really increase their temperature for a few days.
Yeah.
So I wonder if sometimes we have issues because they eat this big prey item and then they can't escape that 90-degree hotspot who might jump their core temperature up to something even warmer.
Yeah.
So
What kind of boas do you keep?
uh, I work with Sabuge, the Pearl Islands. They're the only constrictors I keep. And then I work with a group of annulated tree boas. Those are my favorite. I love those snakes.
Yeah.
Those snakes they're so underrated in the hobby when it comes to the Corrales genus. People either like the Hortolanus, the tree boas, or they like the Caninus and the basins and all that stuff. And I'm just I don't. These guys they're so mellow. I say they're mellow. I did have a female try to bite me. That was the first time. I don't know if I startled her or she's super food aggressive. When I moved her out of quarantine and moved her in here or into the building, she just kind of turned into a bitch. I don't know what happened. I go, wow, you're just everything I've ever said about you is not true anymore. So right now those are and they come in like two color phases and they'll range in colors too on a spectrum when it comes to the two base colors, but they'll be black or orange, black phase or orange phase or dark phase. They call it dark phase, and then there's like an intergrade phase where it's like kind of a mixture look of the two or a mix
Mm.
of the two. And they're really cool bows, though, man. Generally speaking, aside from the one I have, they're really easygoing compared to something like the Pearl Island boas. Crazy,
Mm.
absolutely nuts. Those like you were talking about your Argentines. These guys, my male bit and wrapped himself when I grabbed him. I was trying to
What?
hook him out to show someone, and he just spazzed out with his mouth open and then just bit and wrapped himself. So
Oh
I mean,
no.
they're nuts. They're really crazy.
Now, a lot of the boa people are generally like you don't really want to see that big of a lump in a boa after you feed them. Do you adopt that, or are you feeding them the same way you're feeding your pythons?
I've pretty much. I've noticed they do better with bigger prey items than multiple small prey items.
Mm.
Like I've noticed, like my male Warren Booth was telling me about some of them seem to have a digestive issue, I guess, when it comes to like being able to take smaller, multiple small prey items. Like I try to feed one of my male annulateds. I was telling you, I don't do the whole, if this doesn't eat, this gets it.
Yeah.
Now that does change when it comes to species. Like, so I was trying to transfer a female annulated over to frozen thawed or whatever, and she wouldn't take it, just wouldn't grab it. But I already fed the male, and I go, shit, I really don't want to throw this away. So I gave it to him. It was a smaller prey item. It wasn't as big as the one he had prior. And most pythons, you do that too. They usually do fine for the most part. Well, I did it to her or him, and he regurgitated them both.
Mm.
And I go, oh shit, that sucks. But once I give him one prey item, and he'll eat big. I don't know. They're probably, my males are 2020 and my females are 2021s, and I feed them both the same size rats, small rats, and they're probably that big around. I
Like
mean,
$50.
yeah, something like that. They're not very big. They're pretty lean animals, anyways, but yeah, they're not very big. And then the Pearl Island bows are 23s or 23 and a 22, and they're probably not much, maybe twice the girth. But I feed them small, medium rats too, once in a
Oh, wow.
while. I don't feed very often. I don't feed them very often because I'm kind of, they're in small tubs right now. I'm looking to get, I have two cages. One's back here. I'm just waiting to get the extra large sky hides, or the hides, so I can give them the little boreal hides for the two annulated females.
Yeah.
So right now, I really like the annulated tree boas, man. If you do you work, I know you work with the constrictor. Do you work with any of the corralis?
No.
Oh, you need to, man. It'll be your new favorite. Maybe not so much the emerald stuff, because those got some pretty they got some pretty intimidating teeth on them. But if you like pretty colorful snakes, I mean the Amazons and the annulateds, and
Yeah.
uh, you may not like the what are they called? Russian burger eye. Those guys they're like Amazons on steroids. They get
Yeah.
like, they can get 8 feet long and eat large rats and stuff. They get big. So
I have Amy from Happy Basins coming on. And I mean, have you ever seen her set up her snake room with
I
her?
don't think so. I'm not
It,
too familiar with too many of them guys.
so I did an episode with Ron St. Pierre, and she commented on that, and then it brought me to her profile, and then I it's kind of bananas. She's got walls of cages filled with basins, and then she has just branches attached to the entire ceiling, is all branches and vines. And at night, she opens up the enclosures and brings vines into their cages, and they all come out and just go around the entire room all night long.
Oh, I know who you're talking about now. She's out. She's by you. She lives out
Uh,
by you.
I'm not sure where she's at.
You
I'm
know,
gonna
I
have
think
to
I know.
check now.
I think I know who you're talking about. She does videos with Dave Kaufman. They go out to the out
Yes.
in
Yep.
Central America or whatever to look for them. Emeralds, I think. I guess
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, I know who you're talking about now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty bananas. I don't think I'll ever be getting any emeralds or anything, but they are badass to watch. And I think
Oh yeah.
Ron's got like over 70 of them, keeping them
Oh
outside,
man. Yeah,
which
that'd be
is,
wild.
yeah.
My fear with keeping stuff outside, I've heard you talk about it a couple times, my fear is I fuck something up and there's like a weak spot in the cage and the snake gets out.
Hmm.
That would be my biggest fear. I
Yeah.
would almost fear that more than the worries of outside predators like coons and stuff trying to mess with them. Because I
Yeah.
feel like I could build stuff around that, like a secondary screening around the cage or
Yeah.
something like that, or or electric wires around the cage. There's stuff I think, but if there's a weak point in the cage, that's my biggest fear, is a snake getting out, and then I got like a whatever expensive or whatever animal it is
Yeah.
just loose, and you'd probably never find it again. I
Oh,
guess
for sure.
depending
Yeah.
on the species, I guess. I've gotten
I
lucky with some stuff though. I've had escapees like a little baby Antaresia, and no joke. When one of them got loose, I go, I'm never gonna find that again. Luckily, it's so small. If it shrivel up and die, you probably won't smell it too much.
Yeah, you won't.
That's just the way I looked at it. I go, oh well, I just chalked it up. I'm never gonna find it again. A couple
I
days later, come in at night and it's just sitting out in the middle of the floor. I said, oh, what a coincidence.
really.
Didn't think I was gonna find you again.
I think that's how I lost my first children's python, and my first spotted python was exactly that. They both got out and
Oh
just
gosh.
disappeared. And I ended up finding one wrapped around a plug at the outlet, and the other one was just gone.
Just gone. Yeah.
Just gone.
Yeah. Well, luckily for you, you live out in Florida. You think about it, man. You're going to be the cause for loose Antaresia in Florida now. I'm just kidding.
No,
Just joking.
this was back in 2011. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, now there's established population. That's
yeah,
what you're trying to say. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, yeah. It
No.
was a spotted
I've
and a
heard
children's.
I've heard rumor mills about this. This is another fear of mine. I remember Ryan talking about on Cush's podcast about this, and it just reminded me of what we're talking about with escapees. So he said something about Cush asked him about doing it for a living, right? And Ryan said, "Make sure you choose your partner wisely, or whatever it is." And I thought immediately made me think of this guy in Northern California that I was told I was told this about someone, or someone told me about this, but he had one of the biggest group of diamond pythons in the U.S. And he was out of he I guess work related, was out of I don't know if it was the country or out of state, but
Yeah.
he left for work related thing, and I guess him and his old lady were having a real serious turmoil, and I mean to the point where they were calling each other fighting, and apparently they said they're done, they're broken up, right? What'd she do? She took all his diamond pythons and let them loose out there in Northern California. I don't even remember. I think it was 20 plus diamond pythons loose in
No.
Southern Cal or Northern California.
So
And
they
I
won't
go,
survive then.
yeah, probably not. Once that winter hit, they probably were pretty,
Damn.
unless any were able to migrate far enough, but yeah, who knows? Or got to a valley where it doesn't see too many extreme temps. I don't know. But either way, I was like, wow. I go, yeah, you
Man.
better choose your partner wisely. I've heard, like I said, I've heard rumor mills about it. People didn't, you know, bad relationships go south, and yeah,
Man.
yeah, and then we talk about escapees and stuff like that. I go, we had we had this is years ago, and it's funny. Like anytime any animal escapes, all your non-related or non animal keeping buddies always ask you if it was yours. We
Mhm.
had like this was probably 2015. We had someone let loose a big Burmese python, like a big adult. I don't know if it was a female, but it was a big adult, like 13, 14 foot, and it
Yeah.
scared some lady out. And this was out in the country. Someone let it go, and it's like everyone asked, "Oh, is it yours?" Ben was alive at the time. People were asking him if it was his or anything. Authorities, if they know, if they know about you, especially out where I can't remember if it was in my county or his county, but either way, I think if they know, if especially if you're in a or small town, a lot of people know each other, so you'll be the first they come and ask about it.
Yeah.
And then people want to know, hey, can you take it in? I go, no, I don't want to take it. No big Burmese python, who knows what, I'm just like, no. I
Yeah.
go, I would now if it was to help keep it from hitting the papers, I would have taken it and just had it euthanized at a vet or something. I'd have had a
Yeah.
vet or something euthanize it or something. But yeah, but that's just to avoid the media. As soon as any animal gets loose, it certainly goes on the first page of some news reporter or
Oh
something like
yeah.
that.
Well, I mean that was literally in my neighborhood. We had a an Asian water monitor,
Yeah, I remember
walking
hearing about
around.
that.
Yeah,
I
and I'm
saw
like,
some of my buddies sent me pictures of that, and I go, "Yeah, it sounds like Florida, all right." A
yeah,
big water, but that's another thing too, man. I don't get why some of these big animals get so popular. You
yeah,
ever notice that where I remember ball python people, they only wanted big boa constrictors or they wanted big retics and berms because those are the animals at the time that had all the morphs. They didn't want
hmm,
to deal with anything small. And then monitors were probably even worse. People only wanted water monitors because they were big, colorful, and had morphs.
yeah,
But they wanted them, and I'm just like, why? There's so many tiny dwarf species of all this stuff, and you choose to work with the big monstrous animal that you certainly can't house, but you want it because of a morph. And obviously,
yeah,
some of them can't house because some of them just let them go. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. I want a black dragon, but I would keep it in an outdoor enclosure, probably 12 by
right,
12 or something like that, you know, and but
right,
you need to have a strategy and a plan. I mean,
yeah,
there's a reason why I don't have one yet, you know, and
right, right.
it's because I know that they grow fast and I don't have a plan yet, you know.
Yes, some of those big reptiles, man. Like I said, I'm not a big feeder, and those two mainland retics, man. I mean, they just grow.
Yeah.
It is impressive how. I mean, anytime they eat, it goes right into growth. And I'm not a big feeder. Well, I'm a big feeder, but because I feed these big meals, I don't feed them those very often. It's
Yeah.
kind of when I have an influx of retired breeder rodents, then I'll give it to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what size what do you plan on keeping your mainland retics in? Like what size cage?
All right. I'm going to show you this because I have it. I'm in the big snake room right now.
Okay.
You see that corner by the window? There's like old racks that I'm looking to get rid of. So these are all racks. That corner
Yeah.
by the window right there,
Uh-huh.
from that window to that wall, and it goes all the way to which. Sorry, this is why I don't do YouTube videos. Maybe that second fan there, a
Uh-huh.
little past that. There'll be two big cages right there, two walk-in enclosures.
Nice.
Um, it's not exact measurements, but I think 12-foot long, 6 foot deep, and just under seven, probably about 7 feet high.
Nice.
So two big walk-in ones just for the retics, because boy, they'll need it. They grow so much quicker than any of the other. Because I work with Indians, Sri Lankans, rocks, um, the berms. You know, I work at the scrubs grow. It's weird. Scrubs grow lengthwise pretty long, but you don't
Yeah.
really notice it till you take them out. It's weird when all the other pythons get pretty girthy for the most
Yeah.
part, especially in the that complex. So yeah,
So
they just
those walk-in enclosures you're just going to frame them out and
yeah, I'm gonna just like you do with a bedroom in a house. You just build a frame, and now I don't know what I'm gonna do with the inside. I don't think I'm going to use. I really don't know if I want to use these panels that I have in the room to do
Mhm.
the inside. I want to do bigger sheets because these are like individual 16 wide panels by however long you want to make them. But
Yeah.
I don't. They're great panels, but the problem is they're hollow, and
Mm.
my fear is that if a retic really, really, especially if it has nothing better to do all day, keeps pushing against it, it might be able to just eventually break it in. Maybe I
Mm.
could be wrong, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So I'm going to try to. I don't know. I'm in the air right now. I thought about getting whole sheets, like whenever we build the frame, get whole sheets that or the exact measurements of the frame, and then have someone come in and plastic weld
Yeah.
the whole sheets together because there's going to be each cage going to have a good size viewing window too, so I can still see. They're not going to be naturalistic. I'm not looking to do naturalistic. Just give them the
Ah,
space.
it would be so
Yeah,
cool though if you did.
yeah, it'd be cool. It'll still look neat. I'm going to give them too big. I'm going to give them on a terrestrial hide, and I'm going to give them an arboreal hide still too. Just
Nice.
obviously bigger and have to build it out. It'll be made out of a PVC box, and then I got a plan, and it's not so much for the retics. It's more for some of my like the rocks and the Indians that are a little bit more aggro, don't like getting physically
Hmm.
touched. Is shut off doors for hides. Give all the cages in this big snake room are gonna have shut off hides where you take a snake hook and you shut the door so if they're in the hide you can access the cage with the animal in, almost like a venomous keeper would do, but with
Hmm.
big constrictors because some of those snakes just I feel bad because some of them just you could tell they just do not like having physical interaction with people. So if
Yeah.
I can avoid not having to touch that animal, unless for whatever reason it might be okay. I've noticed sometimes with snakes in general, you'll notice sometimes they're a little more okay than others to be messed with. And I'd
Yeah.
rather, unfortunately with big snakes, we keep them in these basic setups where there is no, you have to get them out to clean them or
Yeah.
something, or you have to physically touch them anyways. You can't just put them into a hide because usually there wouldn't be a hide big enough to fit what most people keep big mainland retics in.
Yeah.
So there's like trying to find a. I was trying. It's still in the mind though. It's not actually written down or anything like that. This room's not quite done yet. All we need to do is finish up the trim in this room and then get this. We bought like 15 space heaters for the building because each room's heated by one or two space heaters. This big room is going to be heated by three, and I had six of them go out,
Oh shit.
and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me! I spent all this money on all these space heaters, and they just all shot shit. So
Where
what?
where's your facility at? Is that on your property or is it on
It's
a?
it's on my parents' property. They
Oh,
actually
nice.
brought it up to me. They said, "Would you be interested?" Because they actually have they bought in snakes too. I actually take care of some of their snakes,
Hmm.
breed them, sell the babies, and then just give them the money for it. It's
Nice.
kind of like they're retired. They don't, you know, they just do whatever side hobbies they do. Well, they brought it up to me, and I go, it's like I didn't really think too much of it because I was doing pretty well just doing it out of the bedroom, but
Hmm.
I still wanted to expand, and there was only so much I could expand to in this little 16 by 12 room that I was originally in. And they offered up the land they had, and I go, huh. I go, sure. I guess if you guys are actually cool with this, and it's all right with like the HOA, because I mean, it's a 2,500 square foot building.
Jesus.
This is a house. I mean, if you drove by it, it looks like a house. You almost think it's another house attached to the property. I mean, it's not small, but yeah, yeah. Like I said, I had to be. I'm very grateful for what my parents have been able to help me with when it comes to stuff like this. They're always been supportive. They always go with me to shows and stuff
Nice.
because they're just supportive and they like the reptile community.
Yeah.
They've been a part of it with me along the whole step of the way. From the time I originally started and got into it to now.
How far is that building from where you live?
Oh, it's not that far. I just
Nice.
like walk. Oh, I guess I could walk if I wanted to,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's not that. Yeah, it's
That's
not that
perfect.
far.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. Good for you. Are you
yeah.
still going to keep anything at your house?
Maybe quarantine stuff.
Yeah.
That's right now. That's all I'm really thinking of doing is keeping the quarantine. Well, it's what I do now. I keep the quarantine stuff there and monitor it and all that stuff there. So that's kind of
Nice.
what I right now. Some I was telling you about. I'm not much of a lizard guy, but there's been some small species of lizards that have been I thought about getting, but then I'm like, do I want them in the house or do I just want them out in the building? Because this building, it's not just all snakes. If you walk in, it's this open floor, and then it splits off when you walk down to four different rooms. And then the hallway area is what I call it is standard house material like wooden trim, drywall, stuff like that. It's not till you get into the reptile rooms, then it's the panels and PVC walling and all that.
How much is
So
that paneling for the walls?
I'd have to look it up. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Is it pretty
It probably
pricey?
it's a little bit more. I know it's a little more expensive than drywall, but it's easier to put up. Honest to God, I'm not. I This is going to sound bad for how old I am, but I was never into building stuff. And then when I start doing this, it was I did me and my dad both did it, and it was pretty easy to put up. So it's pretty easy to do. So
Nice.
yeah, it clicks together. It's pretty. The only thing that can be kind of a pain in the ass is if the frame is uneven. Sometimes it's hard to get them to click and look even. So you'll end
Yeah.
up getting a little bit of a gap in some of them, but there's nothing you can do. I mean, you could take caulking or something and seal it, make it look a little smoother, but other
Yeah.
than that, I don't know how Ryan does it. I stalk Ryan a lot. I don't know if you've caught on to this as much as I talk about him and Nick and all them. But I looked at his building. I try to be more observant before I ask, unless something just isn't making sense.
Yeah.
But I haven't asked him because it doesn't matter anyways, because I'm done with everything in this room for the most part when it comes to the panels. But mine are horizontal, or mine go up and down.
Yeah.
I don't know if his lace sideways, like he took them, just set them. I was trying to look, and it looked like they went the opposite of what I did, which
Huh.
I was like, that's wild. If you have like a 40-foot room, you would have to get a 40-foot sheet of this PVC panel just to drop them from side to side compared to
Yeah.
8 or 9 or 10 foot, however tall your ceilings are, or your walls are.
Yeah.
So,
Is that like a drop ceiling that you have? Is it
yep,
or okay, cool.
yeah,
Nice. Where
yeah.
I wanted to talk to you real quick about field herping because I know that that's something that we've talked about offline. And then just where all have you actually gone? I know you've gone and you've seen the Timor and all that.
Okay. So, I don't, like I said, me and you are on the same age. I don't know if you went through this, but I haven't traveled a whole lot in my 20s and stuff outside of in the US. And I was just getting ready to turn 30 a couple of years ago. And I'm sitting there going, I've never left the country, like just never left. And I've never really, if I left the country, I wanted to go somewhere to see the snakes I keep. I didn't really want to go to see, um, like Canada. I don't have a desire to really go to Canada or Mexico or something. I mean, Mexico and South America has herps I really want to see in the wild, but they
Hmm.
weren't like I need to do this type of herping trips.
Hmm.
So, and this is why I'm really grateful for the reptile hobby is during COVID, I sold some snakes to a buddy in South Africa, and we got to know each other. We talk a lot. We still talk a lot, or quite a bit, anyways. And I sold him the snakes, and then I ended up picking up a group of Angolans from over in South Africa that are one line's totally unrelated to what we have, and another one's half unrelated to what
Wow.
we have. So I picked up a group from him, or picked those up from him from buddies he knows, and we start to talking. And one day he just threw it out there. He goes, "Yeah, have you ever decided to?" Because I guess I was talking about traveling or going out and seeing some of the world. And he goes, "Yeah, if you ever come out my way, let me know." And it's like an open invitation to hang out with him or whatnot. Well, I think it was right. It was in 2022 because it was like right before my 30th birthday. I was like, shit, I've sold enough snakes right now. You know what? I think before my birthday, I want to go to South Africa. And, where I live and where I've grown up, a lot of my dad's side of the family's traveled quite a bit across the world even.
Hmm.
But really, like, even where I work, there's not a whole lot of traveling. A lot of people think you're crazy for leaving the country. That kind of like this. I hate to call it the small mind. I guess it's more fitting to call it the fear
Yeah.
mindset people have about traveling to other places.
Small
And
town mindset or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I think it's truly fear. Some people, I mean, It's weird how people, you say Africa, people go, aren't you afraid of lions and, lions or leopards or hyenas? And I go, well, in the Northwest, are people afraid to go out to see bears, cougars, wolves? And it's funny how that works, right? Or at
Yeah.
least in my mind, how people are totally against one thing, but then we still have an equivalent here, kind of like Florida. Like, aren't you afraid to go into water because of the alligators or something like
Yeah, I
that?
don't go in the fresh water.
Yeah, right. But that's stuff you hear, and I think right before I was like, you know what, fuck it, I think I'm gonna go ahead and try to go to see. He offered it, and I made sure to ask. I didn't just pop up there one day. I just said, hey, you mind of showing me around if I take a trip out there? So we I set it up. He kind of set it like an itinerary. It was kind of just, he just threw it out there. It wasn't like when I went to Indonesia. I'll get to in a minute. So it was kind of well. And then the problem I had was 2 weeks prior to going to South Africa, I did a powerlifting meet and I
Mm.
tore my quad. I
Oof.
I feel like I was coming out of the hole in a squat and I heard a pop and then it folded me like a lawn chair. I mean, that's the best way I could describe it. I told people it literally that weight. It was a weight I've done hundreds of
How much
times.
was it?
It was 645, 650,
God
which is
damn.
pretty light. Like
For you.
I was hitting some weight. Oh, dude, I was hitting like 700 for five. I mean, I was hitting
Wow.
weight. The only difference is I was cutting down quite a bit. I dropped like 40 pounds
Yeah.
prior to doing this meet almost. And so that happened. And at first I didn't know. I thought I just might have cramped because it didn't bruise right away. It took like 5 days for it to bruise. It wasn't until I went on my trip or was heading to the airport, I noticed the bruise on my quad.
Mm.
And so I would the whole trip. I had I don't know if you ever had leg injuries like that where your leg's more stiff. It's just like it's like a peg leg almost. I've torn my meniscus and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like it was almost the same as that, where my leg barely could bend, or if it did bend, it only slight, and it couldn't do much. So I couldn't do all the crazy stuff I would have done if it
Yeah.
wasn't. So, but it was still a wild experience. I got to see, first time out of the country too, and I was just like, you know,
Were you
little
by yourself
shell.
or
Yeah,
did
it
you
was
go
just
with a
me.
friend?
It was just
Wow.
me. Yeah, I just said, because like I said, even in the reptile hobby, man, you'll hear the reptile hobby where the fear of just leaving that goes
Yeah.
adventure or something. And I, being a big fanboy of Nick and Ryan, both of those guys travel pretty extensively. And I remember Nick would always talk about it. He would always talk. NPR guys would always talk about it. And
Yeah.
after a while, it eats you up, and you go, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I make pretty good side money from the reptiles. Why don't I just actually see these animals in the wild? Because I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to go to Australia. That hasn't happened yet, but I was just like, I always just been wanting to see these pythons in the wild. Well, so then I get to Africa. We this so the first thing I did when I walked out of the airport, I noticed there was a smell. So my buddy asked me, "So what'd you think when you first?" Because he knew that I told him this was the first time leaving the country. He goes, "What did it? How was your experience like when you got out of the plane?" I go, "You know what?" And I didn't. I try to word this to not sound disrespectful, but I go, "It had a smell to it, and the only way I can describe the smell." And I'm not saying it was a bad smell, but the only way I could describe it smelled like the elephant house. Like when this sounds bad, but like when they keep their big
Yeah.
like the elephants, the rhinos, and the giraffes in a certain indoor area, it smelled similar to that. And I go, I don't. He just laughed about it, but I was just like, that's the only way I could describe this. It was a smell. It wasn't a bad smell. It just was different than when if being
Yeah.
in all over the U.S. It just didn't. I don't know why that was the first thing that hit me, but it was the first thing that hit me. But yeah, and then I
Yeah.
got to see how they do it in South Africa. I got to see a lot of reptile collections too. and it's funny too. Like, I don't mean no disrespect to them, but I don't care to see more people's reptile collections. It was interesting to see, but it certainly wasn't like, oh, I got to see. I wanted to see these things in the wild. That was
Yeah.
my goal. But again, knowing the environment you're heading to is important because you don't know what time of year you're going. If you don't know, you could set yourself up for disaster or
Mm.
missing stuff. So when I went there, the it was the end of getting towards the end of our summer, they're in South Africa, so that's reversed. So it was the towards the end of their winter. It was
Mm.
surprisingly cold. Like,
Wow.
I mean, it probably was Florida cold. Maybe most parts of Florida. I mean, and this is places where South African rocks, live and stuff. So I mean, this is stuff with pythons and Nile crocodiles. That's why you guys get those Nile crocodiles loose out in your guys' neck of the woods. I hear rumor mills that there are some, but if there are, they definitely could hold up a population up there for sure.
I
You
haven't
know,
seen any.
I heard rumor mills, but I don't. You never know. But
Yeah.
it was cool up there. Like I was surprised how cool it could be,
Mm.
for a python. So yeah, then I did the trip, and like I said, got to see a lot of collections, a lot of see how they do stuff out there, and it was interesting, and it was really wild experience. So, but once I did that one trip, it gave me the itch to want to travel. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like anything new to you. You're pretty excited about it. So I think later on that year, I was looking to get some the Jampiensis retic stuff, the Dwarf stuff. So I hit up old Daniel Solis out in California. Before he stopped breeding them, and he had a lot of stuff he got from like Dan Maleri, a lot of imports that Dan imported, and
Mm.
he had a decent group of those, and he had offspring of. And I was talking to him, and I was like, "Hey, can I get some of the? I'd like to get at least a pair of these animals." And stuff. And we ended up getting along pretty well. We did a couple trades. Like because he has a pet store out there in California, and I'd send him some ball pythons for his pet store. Well, I knew he had one. Had another business called Jungle Diaries, and I was I was surprised that that was an industry. The expeditions stuff is an industry apparently, and I didn't
Hmm.
know that till I start doing it, and then I start seeing all these other Instagram pages of just people do these expeditions around the world, really. And Daniel did them. Well, he has a lot of South American trips. I think he has a lodge down there now in Costa Rica. I think could be wrong. And he uh, he had an Indonesia trip, and it was he sold it as like any business. It was like Komodo Island, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, we all know pythons. Most of the python clade is in Indonesia. So I go, well, shit, I want to go to Indonesia. And I was just like, was talking to him about it because I didn't know how that worked. I didn't know if it was invite only. This is like I said, I was naive to the whole that industry. I didn't know if you had to know someone, if you had, if we had to fill out, some something for in case someone got people did get hurt too. That was the fucked up part. So uh we talked about it. He said, yeah, Indonesia, you just send me the money and then buy your tickets and stuff. And he told me all the things they were planning on doing, and they I go, well, shit. I go, it definitely sounds like something I want to do. And again, I use snake money, and I use that to fund these trips that I occasionally go on. And especially Indonesia. Indonesia gets a really bad rap in the reptile industry as far as traveling to. People go, oh, it's so dangerous. We don't know, you could die and all this stuff, get mugged. I go,
Yeah.
dude, these people, grown men, weigh 110 pounds soaking wet. I'll have to show you a picture. There's me next to a grown Indonesian man. There's no way, unless there's 10 of these fuckers that jump on my back. Ain't no way, unless they have weapons, they're not mugging me.
Yeah.
They're gonna rue the day. I'm not trying to sound like a badass, but these guys are tiny. They are tiny. They're not. I go. It's not this big, dangerous. And the guns, dude. It's no. I'm from East Saint. I live next to East St. Louis. That's one of the most dangerous cities in the world, and
Yeah.
or in the U.S. at least, anyways. And I'm like, they. Yeah, no, it's no different than when you go to the hood. I go.
Yeah.
I go. It's. Just, I go. It doesn't faze me at all. I go. I'm not. When I go on trips too, and I always get a kick out of this. I don't want to go on a vacation where I'm going to sit on a beach, drink, or read a book. I
Yeah.
want something where I'm going to get out, sweat, bleed, cry, shit on myself, something where something weird's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want something wild. Like, I want something, because when you go to shows or when you go to campfires, you go to, particularly for me, like reptile shows, and you talk to other people and tell them stories. It's never how you're, you sat on the beach and read a book the whole weekend or a whole
Yeah.
week. It's how your life was almost endangered, because those are always the best stories, man. I've
Yeah.
always just like, those are the kind of stories I was more into than the other trips, Not to say those can't be good, great in their own way, but to me, they're lackluster to say the least. So, I, the funny part is with the Indonesian trip, I almost didn't go. And
Hmm.
the reason why was, so I leave from, I was supposed to go from St. Louis to O'Hare in Chicago, and we get ready to. I board the plane. We get ready to take off. They were moving, and then they stopped, and they over the intercom they go, the windshield wiper quit working. We got to go back. I go, okay. So we went back and we waited. Thank God we waited a little bit too. I don't remember how long it was, but it was a while. And we get back on. They said everything's good, and we start going again. And they said, oh, the windshield wiper quit working again. So then we had to go back, and I was like, all right, this is getting frustrating. At the second time around, that's when I talked to the flight attendant lady and told her, can I get this switched in case something happens? Because I had like a 6 hour layover there, so I had plenty of time to kill. But the second time, it took like a couple of hours,
Hmm.
and then eventually they go, we had to cancel this flight because they had to get someone from Chicago, but actually bring someone in with the part to actually fix it. So
Wow.
that got canceled, right? So then they had to get me on another flight to O'Hare. So we finally get on this one. We take off from St. Louis. O'Hare is only like, I don't even think it's an hour. I think it's maybe 45 minutes, 50-minute flight, you know. And halfway through, they go, we have to make an emergency landing. We're low on fuel. I go, you can't make this flight with the fuel. What did you do? I was just blown away. I was like, I don't know anything about planes, but I'm sitting there going, this is barely a flight. I go, it was almost more worthwhile for me driving from Missouri to Chicago to get to my original flight than it would have been going from St. Louis and flying to Chicago. That's how
Wow.
big of a pain in the ass. So then we land to some stop, where a fuel stop. We wait there for another like 30 minutes, maybe an hour, something like that. And I was like, oh my God. I go, I swear to God, one other thing happens, I'm just fucking going home. I'm not dealing with this. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I was so frustrated. And I like this. I haven't even left the U.S. yet, and it's already this frustrating. But once we got up through that headache, everything went smooth. So I'm glad I stuck with it. Otherwise, I'd have gave up too soon. But it
Yeah.
was smooth. I was a day late. Everyone else was there and did something the first day. I came in a day late, but it's no big deal. They'll come back and get you and stuff. So it wasn't a big deal. It was pretty easy for the most
How
part.
how long was the flight from there to Indonesia?
Ooh, so 20. No, I think it was 23 hours, maybe
What?
25 hours. You
That's
know,
insane.
Oh, dude, I
Wow.
tell you. So, uh, apparently, I'm bad at judging how much clothes I need because on the way back home, I ran out of clothes. So I was coasting for 2 days with the same clothes that I was herping
Oh no.
in Indonesia. So think about Florida in summertime, and
Yeah.
that's when I was, you get all swamp assed and stuff. And then I was like, yeah, we were. That was pretty wrong. I felt so bad for whoever sat next to me. I
Yeah.
felt uncomfortable. I was like, dude, this is gross. Really
Yeah.
gross. I had nowhere to go. I just sitting in my own filth, dirty
Yeah.
2 day old underwear. Oh, it was gross. That's always
Uh,
pack extra underwear. That's if there's
yeah.
one thing you get from this, it's pack extra more than you think you might need.
Man.
So yeah, we get to Indonesia and we spend 4 days in Jakarta or Java. That uh, Jakarta is the big international airport they have out there. It's where a lot of the um, importers send animals to is Jakarta.
Okay.
So we went to Jakarta. We hung out. We hung out there for a few days. We went through a few different terrains, lower elevation, and then we went up to the mountains. Well, the mountains were a little interesting because it was a wildlife reserve, and so the one that I think what scares most Americans, and it's probably more white people, is because you kind of, especially white males that have, that they feel like they're owed something. And then you go to other countries and some of them might look down on you, more
Hmm.
than look up to you, unless they're like little Indonesian kids, because that's another story. And they had a military stop going up to this mountain, and this took 3 hours to drive to this spot. So we get there, they pull us over. They didn't pull us over. They stopped us and came up to the vehicle. They were talking. Well, in the car, they saw Dan and David. David and Dan are Hispanic, so they're dark skinned fellas. Well, then they saw the two white boys in the back, and they pulled out the two Indonesian guides that were taking us around, and they sat them down on the sidewalk, almost like they're getting searched.
Oh shit.
And they pull out their guns, and they were interrogating them about why, because I think they thought we were going to smuggle animals out of there. Is the
Oh
only thing I
man.
could think of. I don't think it's because they hate white people. I think it was because they thought we were going to smuggle something. Because
Yeah.
uh, I'm sure that's a thing. Because I know it's a thing. So they told us we can't come up here,
Were
and
these
we're
like, did they like take pistols out of holsters or did they have rifles on them?
rifles, and they were
Man,
just,
that's pretty sketchy,
they
dude.
were they were holding them, and you don't understand what they're saying. So at least we don't, and they're just
Yeah.
holding them like almost more of like to let you know they're in charge. They weren't like pointing them. As far as I can remember, they weren't pointing them at anyone. So Daniel was all distraught. He goes, "Man, we really wanted. We had a lodge up there we were going to stay. We need to figure out." So he was distraught. But then we sat there. He talked about it, and he goes, "All right, we're going to go all the way on the other side of the mountain." So that took 4 hours. So
Wow.
this originally was just a couple-hour trip up the hill, turned into 4 hours up a sketchier road. These roads look like they were built back in the 70s and 80s, gravel roads, and never were maintained.
Hmm.
Potholes galore. This dude bottomed out his van. We had one of the guys we had two vehicles, an SUV and a van. The minivan just, that thing took a beating like like no one's business. That thing,
Wow.
I mean, we had a flat tire uh, once, and did some damage to the bottom of his car. He had like, I think it was oil leaking from his car. Luckily, this is whenever we were done using it, so we didn't run into any issues other than that. But it was at night. This is like midnight, late. We're going up. We're probably driving wise, I don't know. We were probably 10 minutes away from the lodge we were supposed to be at. This, he's a kid. He was like 20 years old or something. He was our guide. He was driving, trying to miss all these potholes. Well, he wasn't paying attention. Well, he drove. He hit the edge of the hill too far, and he it fell out. So the truck or the van got stuck, and
Oh,
we got stuck there. And we're trying because we were in the back. The Daniel and all them were in the front, so we hop out. We're trying to catch him to bring him back to either take us back up there or help us push his car out. So, um, and it's like it's moist and muggy, like not cold, but it's like just real like cold humid. I don't know if you ever felt that before, but
oh
it's just
yeah,
muggy. Even though it's
yeah.
cool outside, it's still it just sticks to you. So,
That's Florida.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was what Indonesia was too. At least, and like I said, I couldn't remember exactly how high in elevation it was, and I don't want to mess it up, but it was pretty high up, so it was cool. It was weird. You think Indonesia, you think hot and humid all the time. When you would go up in elevation, it changes dramatically. Because of the frogs and the lizards and snake species, like the dragon snake. We saw one of those out there,
Mm.
and they like it cold, like really cold. Like those creeks were. I mean, they would freeze your foot when your foot got on it. If your foot was in
Wow.
the little creeks they were hanging in, I mean, it was cold out there. So we we were just putzing around. We were just herping while we were just waiting there for the guys who ran up to try to catch them. And, they run up there, and it was hours. I mean, it was, I don't even know what time we even, 4 o'clock maybe in the morning. It was something like that. And we were just exhausted because we just moved. When you go on these trips, you're always on the go. You might
Yeah.
take a little break here and there, but you're just always going. I
Yeah.
mean, that was something I found that was real difficult with South Africa. We were always doing stuff. We were doing stuff for the most part, but it wasn't as intense as say Indonesia, where we were always doing something. Because when I went to Africa, I noticed I had trouble sleeping at night when it was their night's time. It was I couldn't sleep. I would sleep a few hours, wake up, sleep a few hours. My time was all messed up.
Yeah.
When I went to Indonesia, I slept like a baby because we literally we would just walk and do shit all day.
Mm.
So I was exhausted by the time we were
Yeah.
done. So you would sleep because if you weren't doing anything, you were so tired you just passed out. So that one was a little easier because I was more active. So yeah, we did. We finally got to the lodge. We hang out there for a while. We do some night herping. That's where we found like two dragon snakes. Found a colubrid. We didn't know what it was. None of us did. And we it was pretty impressive too because they were gibbons. You know what a gibbon is?
Yeah. Monkey, right?
The lesser ape. The lesser ape.
Yeah.
Um, they're the ones that make all those hooping noises, those obnoxious hooping noises.
Hmm.
Well, I forgot they were there. I didn't. I knew of the species. I knew they were in Indonesia. I just didn't know they were there on the mountain, or particularly where we were at. And I remember one morning we wake up and I'm hearing this hooping noise, and I go, "Oh, what is this? A bird?" Or I just thought it was a bird. And this little Indonesian guy comes running out, says, "Gibbon, gibbon," or something. And I was like, "Oh shit! I forgot gibbons live here." And I never saw a single gibbon, but we always that other people would see them in our group, or we would just pass up a group of them that were just hanging out in the trees. So I never actually got to see them. I heard them, but I didn't get to see them.
Wow.
And one other thing I really wanted to see, and it was really kind of, it was, it's because I missed it in Africa. Africa, they got the big five, the rhinos, elephants, lions, the Cape buffalo, and the leopard. Well, I got to
Hmm.
see four of them. I didn't get to see leopards. Leopards are my favorite of all, pretty much almost all animals.
Yeah.
By far, out of all the big cats, leopards are my favorite. Well, leopards have one of the largest geographical range out of all the big cats. They go from, South Africa up through Africa and then all the way into Iran, Pakistan, India, China, and Indonesia. Well, there's some in Jakarta where we were at in the mountain, and they had pictures in the lodge. They had pictures of, I don't know if it was a male that hangs out, like it's part of his territory to walk through there. And these guys apparently knew like the time he usually walks through. We tried to. They said he walks through it at night, and it's usually at 12 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So we at that point we were like, all right, we really want to see this leopard. So we went herping at night. Usually the sun, it's 12:12 in Indonesia. That sun comes up at 6:30 and is down by 6:30.
Oh,
And it goes
wow.
from light to dark, pitch black. And so as soon as 6:30 came, we would have eaten or something by then, and then we just go out herping for a few hours, 2 to 3 hours. Well, still plenty of time left till 2. So set we tried to set an alarm, but we all were so tired we slept through the alarm because we wanted to go set up a little like near the trail where we'd see this leopard,
Yeah.
passing through at night, which is, I don't know, Africa's a little different, India's a little different. I don't know how many fatalities leopards have done
Yeah.
to Indonesians as far as like how many man eaters there are. I know Africa. We were in a park when we were in that park out there. They said if you there was a male leopard or a leopard or something spotted near the park in Africa, and they said just try not to stay out at night. Because where they generally hunt.
Yeah.
So we
I
almost
know
got
that
lost.
we have panthers here in Florida pretty close to where I'm at. And
Oh, really?
yeah, but I mean they're so
Yeah, they're
uh
hard to see. If they don't want you to see them, you won't even know they're there.
well
They're
that's like the bobcats in our neighborhood. I had
Oh
no
yeah.
idea we had bobcats in our neighborhood. And then we
Oh
got
you.
chickens.
Oh.
And they were so just brash that they would just come right in, jump over our 5-foot fence, go into the chicken pen, which was a 4-foot fence, grab the chicken by the neck, and then bound over the fences with the chicken in its mouth.
Oh,
And
did you see that video in Africa of a female lioness jumped the gate, grabbed the Rottweiler, and then jumped back out
a
just the exact same way
Rottweiler,
a grown up Rottweiler grabbed it, jumped back over the fence with it, like you're talking about with a bobcat with chicken.
man, I got
I
to
mean, it
check
was
that out.
there was a video of it in South. It's funny in South Africa. They all the a lot of neighborhoods have gated houses, and they were just. I was like, because a lot of theft and stuff out there. A lot of people steal your stuff, and I go, why don't you guys get dogs or something? I just threw out like guard dogs, and I said, oh, because these people, the thieves will poison your dogs.
Oh
They'll
man,
kill your dog. They don't look at pets like we look at pets. I mean, they're either working animals or they're not. I mean, Indonesia was kind of the same way. We
yeah,
dogs were either some islands you saw a lot of dogs, some islands I saw quite a few cats. It was weird. Ones didn't have hardly any dogs, some had no cats, but quite a few dogs. It was weird. We had this going joke though. We were like, I wonder if they're eating them because we that was another thing I wanted to do. I wanted to try cat and dog. I have no shame in eating anything that isn't Homo sapien. I'll
yeah,
eat anything. Dog, cat, snake, doesn't matter.
yeah.
So that was another reason I wanted to go to Indonesia because you hear these rumors of the Asians or Indonesians eat cats and dogs. And I remember we had this soup and it had animal organs in it, like hearts and stuff like brain and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
one of the vials of the heart was so small. And they try to tell you it was cattle heart. And I go, it's kind of small to be a cattle heart. You sure this isn't cat heart? Or something like this, because I was like, I don't know about no cow heart. This thing was awfully small to be a cow's heart. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. It. Yeah. Then okay. With what else did we do? Well, we got to see the dragon snake and all that, the gibbons. Oh, on the way down, we went to go leave the lodge. We, I think, I can't remember exactly. I think we decided not to ride back. 'Cause I think we took a different route, and the roads were even worse. Like, I mean, I'm talking potholes every few feet. I mean, it was horrible. You know, it was bad. So and we're all big guys too. I mean, most of us were pretty good size, and we go, you know what? We'll just walk. and let them drive, so we wouldn't keep bottoming out their vehicles in these potholes and stuff. So we we walked hours down this hill, and I was just like, holy shit. I go, this was talk about exercise. I've never burned so many calories before doing this Indonesian trip because, like I said, it was nothing but walking,
Yeah.
nothing but walking. And then after Jakarta, we left Jakarta and went to Bali. Well, before we went to Bali, I think we were trying to find king cobras. There weren't any king cobras, or we weren't able to find any king. I mean, they would take us out in the middle of town in a park to look for king cobras. Think about that. You
Yeah.
imagine if we had a park and they knew there was a population or group of rattlesnakes?
Yeah.
You imagine they would exterminate it. There would be no way that the county would want something like
Yeah.
that where kids and people in general hang out and play or whatever. But this was a park in the middle of the town, and we went through the town. Oh, speaking of which, okay, hang on a second. So before we did this, we drive the vehicles into a parking spot, left it. Well, we had to cross the road. This was at night, so it was dark out. You ever seen traffic in Indonesia or any
Oh
Asian
yeah.
country? They're all pretty much the same. Little scooter bikes just flying in and out between cars, and cars are butts to nuts to each other out there. I mean, it really is that crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was these roads are horrible, horribly treacherous. So we're getting ready to cross the road. There was the two locals. One was a guide. One was a local guy who just knew the guide and was hanging out with them. And then there was me, another guy, and then the rest of the guys are behind us. The two natives start walking. They make it up to halfway through the road before we had to stop because of the motorbikes are coming by. And as soon as we stop and wait, we look and we see a motorbike coming. So me and him are sitting there waiting. It goes by. We see it. Once we look at it go by, we look back and we start walking. As soon as we turned our head to look the other way. We hear a bang, just a
Mm.
loud banging noise. And we obviously immediately look over, and this little Indonesian man flying in the air.
Oh
I mean, this
no.
dude got 10, I mean, no joke. He got probably 8 feet up in the air. It didn't even, the guys on the motorbike didn't even stop. They just kept going. This guy flies like 8 feet in the air, falls to the ground, he hits the ground like a newborn calf, like all crumpled up, like in a fetal position. We
Jeez.
thought, oh shit, he's dead. That's the first thing we thought. We go, this dude's dead. Then the other guide goes over to him and is trying to get him to move or something. Where the guy starts moving, we go, okay, he's moving, but his legs have to be broken. Then he gets up and he just sits there, and I goes like, God, this guy actually got up. I know. First of all, if I would have got hit with the bike, not just me, but the guys on the bike would have been hurt too. Because, like I said,
Yeah.
these Indonesian guys, 100 pounds soaking wet, tiny little humans. And
Yeah.
this dude he got smacked and just flew in the air.
Jeez.
I've never seen a grown man fly. It looked like if you took your kid and just threw him on a trampoline,
Yeah.
just airborne him to throw him on a trampoline or something, or into like a ball pit. Same thing, but just grown man, just in the air.
Man.
It was wild. And the fact that they didn't mess their bike up, I thought that was kind of shocking. As hard as they hit them, and they didn't stop.
Yeah.
They didn't even stop to look. They just kept going. I go, I'm glad to know you guys look out for your fellow people, right?
Yeah, that's a
Or
quarter million
something.
dollars here in America.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild. I was just we, we just, and then his family makes fun of him because we ended up walking through by where he lives, and we sat there, and they wanted to. It's disrespectful not to take any if they offer you drinks or food to not take it. So
Yeah.
we had to sit there and eat, and his family was just ripping him about getting hit by a bike. I mean, they
Wow.
were just giving him such a hard time. And I
The
go,
poor
dude,
guy.
we didn't think he was gonna. He didn't end up coming out with us that night. for obvious reasons. Probably wasn't feeling too. But that next day, we went out to a rice field to look for spitting cobras, and he was out there. He came out. He looked just fine. I go, dude, I would have been aching. I don't even think I
Yeah.
would have been even if nothing was broken. My muscles probably would have been just shredded or something, like a full workout
Yeah.
type of feel. I probably wouldn't have been moving. So, yeah, that was the wildest, one of the wildest things I've ever seen. And we saw someone get ran, and they almost got ran over by a truck out in Indonesia. One of the bikes got hit, and the guy was stuck on the bike, but the bike was too big to fit underneath the truck, so he's just truck's just
Jeez.
pushing the bike with the guy on it. But the Indonesian guy, after a few feet, he stops. The truck stops, and the guy just gets up, grabs his bike, and just keeps going.
Oh
I
my
go, these
God.
guys are just monsters. This is the kind of safety you see. There would be a guy on the bike. His one child would be right here, other child right behind him, and his wife or girlfriend hanging off the back. It'd be a family of four on one of these motorbikes, and I'm just
Wow.
like, wow, there's no such thing as safety. I'm talking
Yeah.
kids that just learned how to walk are on these motorbikes, just holding the handle with their father or something, just driving
God
along,
dang.
no helmet, no nothing, just. I mean,
They
it's
smoke a
it,
lot of cigarettes over there too,
oh my
right?
god, it's so bad. It's
Yeah.
so bad.
That's
I mean,
gnarly.
it's and then don't get me started on the toilets too. Holes in
It's
the ground.
yeah, I was gonna say,
You got
yeah.
to be able to squat down. And I don't know, you haven't seen me in person, but I'm kind of big. I'm a little too big to be squatting down to do
Yeah.
anything like that. So it was funny. And what was it? Then we left. We left. What was it? We left Jakarta, went to Bali. Now, Bali's a little bit different. Bali is more of a touristy spot. You hear a lot of Europeans and stuff traveling there. There's a
Yeah.
lot more whites and stuff you see there. Because in Indonesia, obviously, they all have phones and stuff, so they knew it wasn't like none of them had ever seen white. Some of the kids might have been their first time seeing a white guy in person. Because I remember we went herping. One of the times we went in the middle of town to go herping, I had to use the bathroom. Like it was one of those like gotta go type of situations.
Yeah.
So I had to leave the group, and I left the group. And a group of kids tried to talk to me, and I said I I had to ignore them. I didn't know how to say bathroom, so I had to just
Yeah.
walk by them, and I started knocking on all these houses. These houses asking, "Hey, can I use your bathroom?" And they don't speak English, so I had to get on Google Translate to say restroom or something.
Yeah.
And they're all pretty good about it. They didn't. First house I asked, they said sure.
Wow.
You use the
That's
bathroom.
surprising. I mean,
Yeah, they
imagine
didn't.
imagine an Indonesian guy coming to your house and using Google Translate for bathroom
Right, right, yeah.
in
Well, and then
America.
you see the size. Like I said, these are little people. I probably so because when I got done, I came back out to go meet the group again. Those kids stopped me again. I mean, there was like fucking. I'm not joking. 12 of these kids, little kids, rushed me. And I don't, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous. I was gonna get jumped by a bunch of little kids. I was like, they said picture, picture or something. They wanted a picture, so I'm surrounded by these kids wanting to take a picture of me or with me, and I'm just like, I was like, man, you guys got to step back though. I don't want you up on my book bag and stuff because I don't know if these kids are like little thieves or something. I
Yeah.
don't. You just don't know. And I was like, I had my backpack on me, and I didn't want anything getting stolen out of there or anything because they
Yeah.
outnumbered me, so you know they could
Yeah.
have
You've
beat me
seen
up.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. So, but anyways, when we went to Bali, Bali was different. Bali was tons of tourists. It was very touristy. It was kind of like it would almost. Oh my god, I can't really describe it now. I don't know. Either way, there's a lot of white people there. So we
Like
get there.
Disneyland?
Yeah, kind of. I was going to say some part of Mexico where all the U.S. whites go to
Yeah.
like resorts in Mexico, but I don't go to Mexico. I don't know where the resorts are, but
Cozumel
it's
or something.
yeah, something like that. And but Europe does that same thing, but it's with Bali because
Mm.
it'd almost be the similar. Yeah, maybe Bali's a bit further away, but it's kind of like their go-to spot. It seemed like more
Yeah.
exotic, anyways. So we get there. We do more touristy stuff there, like a temple we went to that you had to wear the gown and everything for respect for their cult, their religion or whatever. So we do that, and then we go to find we found a king cobra there, and it was a small one. It was only maybe 7 feet, 8 feet at the most, real long and thin.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty impressive snake. I mean, I it didn't capture me like some people like to think cobras do, king cobras do, but it was still impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll put it like this: it was maybe if I saw one twice that size, it might have been a little bit different, maybe because it didn't hold a candle to a Komodo dragon. You see a
Mm.
big Komodo dragon, that's an impressive beast there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that the king cobra was cool, and like I said, it was a respect thing, but it was like it wasn't all that it wasn't all that like shocking, I guess, or something like we took a lot of dumb photos. I don't know, like if you know my humor and how I can be, I'm one of those like real odd individuals. Do a lot of silly, stupid pictures, and
Yeah.
we would do it with some of the snakes out there, and then obviously we weren't like free handling them or nothing, but with hooks and stuff, we would do silly pictures or whatnot. So we did the cobra. That's when, and then I think we saw the retic in Bali too. We saw a small retic. It wasn't maybe 3 feet, two,
Oh,
three
wow.
feet. It was still pretty young. Looked perfectly fine. It wasn't that shitty. Had a scar on its head, but other than that, it looked perfectly fine. It wasn't that shitty, scrawny animal that the hobby likes to pretend all wild snakes are like.
Yeah.
So, but no, that animal was that was cool. I was a little disappointed too about the retic situation because you kind of when I think of retics in Indonesia, they sound like they're almost like our rat snakes in the U.S., where they're a bit more common, where they
Yeah.
like hanging around human culture for their pests and live, well, different pet animals and stuff or food. So I didn't only saw the one retic. Like I said, I was thoroughly surprised. I was a little disappointed. I thought we'd have saw more retics, but it
Yeah.
was wasn't very many retics, and it was humid too. I would say when we went up there, I think it was their dry season because there was it almost the only place it rained was when we were up in the higher elevations. It would rain down low, hard. Only one time it rained. And it was when I flew out of Indonesia to head home. So I'm presuming, and then how dry Komodo was. Komodo was really dry. So I'm assuming at least that parts of Indonesia was going through their dry season that time of year. So yeah, we saw all those. Got to did the whole thing in Bali. Then we left Bali and we went to the Flores Islands, the Komodo Islands, and I didn't know we were staying on a boat for 4 days. So
Really?
apparently, I don't do I okay. I don't mind boats, and I can be on boats. But if I stay on boats, apparently, I get a little seasick. I
Mm.
guess it's weird. Only thing that happened was I just didn't eat. I wasn't hungry. My
Yeah.
appetite like vanished. It was weird. I didn't throw up. I didn't I don't know. I wasn't like nauseous or any. No, there was a few times I maybe felt a little bit, but and I slept fine. It wasn't like I wasn't sleeping at all, but I would just for whatever reason, it was like we were on the boat for like 4 or 5 days or something like that. And because I don't know if this is the reason, but they don't think they let tourists live on the island or stay on the islands for I don't think it's the dragons hurting people. I don't think they want the dragons or the people harassing the dragons.
Yeah.
That's something I know. When you go to the island, you always have a tour guide.
Mm.
It doesn't matter who you get one or two tour guides with you, like natives, and they're with you the whole time. And they, um, a lot of the people there would harass, like a lot of the Europeans and stuff that went
That
out there would
sucks.
harass, or like I don't. It wasn't like they wouldn't touch the dragons, but they would get, I mean, right up
Hmm.
behind these dragons. And I was telling you about the snakes and how I do silly pictures. Well, so when we first got the Komodo and we've gotten to the park, Komodo Park, and they stage the area so a lot of the tourists don't have to travel very far into the island to go see them. Is they'll set up a lot of meat around the perimeter there, the open area, their entrance there, and they would set meat up to get them to entice to want to stay around that general area.
Hmm.
They wouldn't feed them by hand, but like I said, they would tuck meat away to get them to hang around there. So we got in there, and there's just tons of dragons, and they all different sizes. Little ones, like the smaller ones are more arboreal. They'll climb and hang out around the trees. And
Yeah.
obviously, the bigger they get, the more terrestrial they get. And so all different sizes, anywhere from 3 foot all the way up to 8 or 9 foot. We saw dragon size wise. So we saw some big ones. I mean, bigger than your hands put together. I mean, they were good size. And they were when they were at rest, they almost looked like they were dead. They looked like deflated tires, just flaccid, sitting there, not moving at all.
Yeah.
But and that was this big one on one tree, and then probably 25 feet away was another tree with a few more smaller ones, and one in particular was probably around a 4 footer. Found a piece of meat between the split between these two trees, and that split was towards the ground too, wasn't that high off the ground. And this dragon pulled out some meat, and we noticed it pulled that. But once it pulled that meat out, that 125 feet away that was sitting there flaccid, looked like it was dead, sprung up and got to that tree. I'm talking in a second. I mean, a blink of
Wow.
an eye, it was to that tree, and I was like, "There is no way I'm doing any silly pictures of these dragons. There is no way." I go, "This thing went from 0 to 60 in seconds. I mean, this thing was
Yeah.
just on it." And then Daniel goes, "You want to see something funny or see something cool?" Something like he made some remark. So this dragon was already it saw that the one other dragon got a piece of meat, so it was on higher alert, kind of hanging around the tree. Well, Daniel took his stick or his snake hook and rustled it in some leaves, and he made that as soon as he made that rustling noise, this male just darted right at us, and I almost went over the fence because
Wow.
I was just like, I mean, this thing was because it was already on high alert, so it was already like uh, really intrigued with what was going on. So when I heard that rustling noise, it got all excited. Daniel was lucky he didn't get kicked out of the park. That tour guide gave him some dirty look and shit when he did that with the leaves. But
Yeah.
yeah, no. After that though, I was like, yeah, not. We'll take pictures, drag. We don't need to do anything silly. I enjoy life. I don't need to do
Yeah.
something dumb that's going to get me killed. So, and then I think it was a few days later, we went to Ranka Island the first night, and we went there looking for snakes. We found a Russell's viper near this cave, and I think that was it that night. But we saw so many of those. What's the species? Uh, it's a little green tree viper. They come in blue, green, and then I think yellow was another one.
Oh, the
We saw
Insularis?
Insularis, yeah. We saw probably 13 of those in one night. It was to the point where you just got
Really?
tired of seeing them. They were just, what's funny too about that is they had these like patches of grass, just random patches of grass. And you think of those vipers, you think of a boreal snake.
Yeah.
So we would primarily look up near trees or any kind of branches or something because that's where you usually see them. Well, we don't pay attention to the patches of grass. We kind of stick our hand or our feet. We kind of hit them and stuff, not thinking much of it. Well, later on, we found a pair of them. It could have been a breeding pair. I'm not sure, but we found a pair of them hanging out right by the patches of grass. And then when I went to call the other guys over, that thing they both slithered down into the grass, the patch of grass. I go,
What?
oh shit, we've been sticking our hands on these this whole time. We better watch where we stick our hands and stuff
Wow.
from now on. So, but no, they were cool. But I mean, we saw one night we saw like 12 or 13 of them, and it was to the point where it was like, kind of getting sick of seeing these. And
That's like the
and
one venomous snake I want to keep
oh
is the
yeah, I know.
Enceladus.
I have a that buddy in Africa who keeps quite a bit of tree vipers and stuff, and that seems to be a big thing in Africa. You get a lot of people, a lot of hot like. It's weird. Like if you think U.S. ball python breeders, you think venomous keepers are the total opposite end of that. In Africa, a lot of ball python keepers who keep venomous stuff.
Really?
It was kind of weird. Not a lot, but there was a handful. It's something you wouldn't see around. I rarely see here, unless the
Yeah.
ball pythons were food for their venomous snakes.
Yeah.
So that was something I've noticed. But yeah, kind of wrapping up the Indonesia trip, and then that our very last day, we decided, or Daniel goes, you know what? I think if we go to that cave that we went to that first night, and we get there as soon as the sun gets ready to set, I bet we could see a Timor python, because that was one of his goals too. Is to see. He's probably his second Timor he saw. So we fly to the eye because we want they other people in the group wanted to stay to see the bats because there was like a certain time of day where all the bats leave the island, and there was like thousands of bats over the top of us. So all these bats are flying over, and obviously when the bats are flying, it's sun's starting to set. So we're trying to watch this, and then right after we fly the Ranka Island, run over to that spot where we were looking for the where we found the Russell's Viper and stuff, and we were looking around, and voila, we ended up looking up towards the ceiling right by one of the exits of the cave, and it was that Timor python kind of sitting there hanging out, like it was looked like he was probably just about to start getting in the ambush position to start hunting, but unfortunately we were there, and that's when we took a couple shots before you touched it or anything, but yeah, it was before he got away. We thought we'd get some other staged pictures with it too, because it was super chill. Nothing like my captive ones in captivity. It's always funny how that works. Seems didn't pee on me, musk on me,
Really?
bite me, nothing. So
Wow.
it was just one though. Who knows if we would have caught more, maybe it'd have been different. That retic. So we caught the retic. The retic. I I got tired of hanging out with the group because it felt like we just all were hitting the same spot. So I just wandered off and got lost out in someone's field. And then when I got called back, that's when they said retic, retic. And I came back, and they already worked out the retic was pretty mellow when I got to it, but they said it lit up a few people they before I got it. So the teamwork could have been a fluke, could have just been the one animal. So
Yeah. That would have been it would have been awesome if you would have seen a monster retic.
yeah, that was one. That was one I really wanted to see. Is a big retic, and we could have saw Burmese. Burmese are native to those islands like Bali and Jakarta and all them, but
Oh, really?
they're more found in the swamps, more of the aquatic areas. So
Yeah.
we didn't get to see them, but that was another one. Like I said, I have a kind of a new goal. I'd like to see as many of the species of pythons I can in the wild. Would be pretty cool to see. Definitely not a cheap adventure either, so you kind of have to.
Yeah.
It's something that'll take a while. It's not something that you can knock off in 1 year, especially
Yeah.
if you have to go out and look for them or something.
Yeah,
So,
you'll have to come out to Florida and we'll knock the Florida python off
oh
the list.
right, I thought about it. I wanted to do Daytona. I miss Daytona. It's been a long time since I've been to Daytona. Like 2015, I think was the last time I went out there. It
Yeah.
was something about Daytona. Daytona has like this historical vibe. I've been to almost all the big shows in the U.S., and there's something about Daytona that gives me like that. This is where it started vibe.
Yeah.
Like this is where all like the legends we know of and herpetoculture started, and you had the king of ball pythons, and oh, what is his name? Oh God, I'm gonna butcher his name. He was a guy in West Africa. He was the one. He was the kingpin, I guess, of the ball pythons back then. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he went to Daytona before. So you had all of these. I mean, just whether you call them legends or big
Yeah.
breeders or whoever, and that's where a lot of it starts. So Daytona is a pretty special show. You
It's
know.
yeah, I love it. I mean, it feels so open too. You know, it's not cramped. It's
Oh
such a
yeah,
nice show.
yeah,
But I'm so bummed I didn't get to go this year. I had cards with my podcast. I had QR codes on it and everything, and then the whole family got sick and
oh yeah,
it
yeah. I
screwed
heard.
everything
Remember
up.
you saying that? Yeah, Daytona. Daytona's a great show, though. I enjoyed Daytona. I like the vibe too, like just the area. It's weird. Daytona's an odd place. You have the clearly touristy spot right up against the beach, and then across the road is kind of like the slums.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had people steal shit out of our van before, so
Oh yeah.
we they just you just have them running across the street with your stuff or something like that.
That's a
So
lot of Florida. I mean, it's a
is
lot
it
of
bad?
yeah. I mean,
I
well,
don't.
it's not too bad, but there's a lot of communities with ridiculously expensive houses and everything,
Yeah,
and 150 feet away can be just something
like
totally
the
run into the ground.
yeah. Well, I remember when we went to St. Augustine. Yeah, we drove through there to go to what you call it, the Gator Farm or whatever, the alligator farm out there, St. Augustine Alligator Farm. We went out there and we got in the parking lot. And the parking lot said it was lock your cars and take your important items out or something like that. Because apparently they got bad theft out there too, or people stealing shit out of people's cars or something. I
Yeah.
go, oh God, good old Florida.
Yeah, I
Like
mean it's
St. Augustine's
everywhere,
beautiful
you
though.
know.
Oh yeah, if you go up to like ours is East St. Louis. If you go like the East St. Louis, that's where if you get mugged, that's where you'll get mugged. Or in the opposite. So everyone has them, yeah, for sure. Has
Yeah.
more of the not so great places.
Yeah.
So, but that's why I encourage people. You know, you're going to have those spots in anywhere you go in the world. So I wouldn't let the
Yeah.
fear of not the unknown scare you from traveling. You know, especially with life. You know, because I think that was probably the biggest thing is when Ben was killed. Ben was killed at like 29, and when I
Jeez.
was getting closer to his age, I was kind of like, man, you just never know. So
Yeah.
you just like, wanted to do something before you just, like I said, you just never know.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Well, on that note, I appreciate you coming on. It was a hell of a good podcast. A lot of information and knowledge you got. And thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I've been enjoying your podcast. You got some real legendary people on here, people I've looked up to for a long time.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely.